Hello, everybody. Hello. Nko, I'm grateful. Where's everybody at? Come on home. Binto Bantaba Network. We're a little bit late. No problem. It was on my side. Nko, I want everybody home. Come on home. Today is Sunday. As usual, if you can hear me clearly, no excuse, no glitch. Let me know. Thank you, Sarjo. You are the first person coming in. I'm just emotional today. I'm so emotional. I'm speechless. This is the first time I cannot welcome y'all. Nko, mbal tentula mbali jaila. Binto Bantaba Network, we are back home again every Sunday as usual. I am privileged to be here with you and this young, brilliant man sitting on the side. When I told them, please come to Binto Bantaba, let's have a great conversation on the topic of the TRRC. All their answer was, we will be in. And I appreciate them. So everybody is welcome. I'm really fired up. I'm really fired up. Ngal tentu ngal jayi. Nga brother solle sambananja. Ma fali nga wali yolle sambanande. Nko nga molle sambana. Njikitala ko. Mbina kacha minkela. Ibela kato kela jere. Walanna. Akai dunia mujikol. Nasita sungol lembi. Nsembete tolel. Na yen nafa. Ayiribulo en nafa, anika en nafa, adingo en nafa, abala julo en nafa, wala nasita sungol lem. Londi tijak, alkalu muso londi tijak. But this brilliant man will take care of everything for me. I have no much to say. So we welcome everybody. Please share the information. Thank y'all. Hello, brothers. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Binto.
I welcome y'all to Binto Bantaba Network.
Thank you.
I have Mr. Jau up there.
Thank you.
Sait Matty Jau. You are welcome to Binto Bantaba Network. This is your first time. Hopefully, it won't be your last time. This Alcalo woman sitting here.
Definitely.
I'm telling you today, I have no work to do. Okay? So we have Brother Sarjo right there. Mr. Barrow.
Binto.
You are welcome to Binto Bantaba Network.
Thank you.
Tamba, this is not your first time. You are welcome once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I am really privileged to be sitting in front of you guys once more. And the viewers, we have this great young man. Today, our topic will be Truth, Reconciliation, and Reparations Commission, which is the TRRC. We discuss national issues. We discuss so many issues as you can see down on our videos, if you are a keen follower. So we discuss different national issues, of which TRRC is not exceptional. So I brought this right here so we can have a discussion about it. It might clear some issue. It might give us some great understanding. All right. So, Mr. Jau, you are welcome to Binto Bantaba Network. You have the floor.
Thank you, Binto. And I want to start by saying hi to Sarjo. I think this is the second time we are sharing a platform, and I've been following his work. I'm a big fan, and I know how much he has been contributing to the socio-economic development of this country, and we really appreciate that. And to my brother and my Hulo Wale, Lamin Tamba, every day we're on it. I mean, I really appreciate him. I mean, he is a Gambian that is passionate about this country. And I think, whether it is in his activism or in his partisan politics, we see a lot of contribution, and we just want to encourage them all to continue to contribute. And to you also, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Brother Sarjo?
Thank you, Binto. And then I know this is my first time on your platform, but I have watched a couple of shows, and then I very much appreciate it. And then I'm very glad to see a platform with Sait. He's the one on the ground. I think he would be more of a resource person here than me. And then Mr. Tamba, I like his commitment. I always like to see his point of view. It kind of makes me reflect and then think. I think we all need Mr. Tamba and then a lot like him in order to do self-reflection. And then that's something I like about him.
Thank you. Tamba?
All right. Thank you, Binto Jasa. Thank you, Binto Bantaba Network. Happy to be here again, as always. Sarjo, I think this is the second time we're meeting online. One day we'll meet in person, hopefully.
Sure.
And we'll all be in the field developing Gambia rather than pushing and pulling online. And Sait Matty doesn't is I don't know what type of person he is, but he's very resourceful, very, very resourceful. And when we class, you can tell he only gives information on one side that favors a story, which indirectly disadvantages the APRC. It's very knowledgeable, but his knowledge is very selective. and okay. I like what you do in Sait. I'm a big fan of documenting everything. So the polls thing, asking people what you're doing, although it's in its infancy, I realize Gambian people don't keep or take records of every single thing. And this is why we're suffering today with statistics, election statistics, demography, statistics, societal statistics. So these things you're doing, again, I don't know whether you listen to our APRC programs. The next time we get in government in December or January next year, electoral roll, public records, national database, these things will be taken very seriously on this occasion. And, you know, we'll get to that point one day, but it'll be taken very seriously because some of these disasters we're having, like coronavirus pandemic, is a lack of data. That's why a lot of things that government wants to do takes long before we do them. Even disaster relief takes long. With very good record keeping, these things are almost instantaneous now digitally. You can tell Tamba village how many people are there, Barrow village how many people are there, Jau village how many people are there. You can target resources very effectively. But we'll get there. So happy to have you on the platform, Sait. For the first time, we'll go face to face. Shame is online, but it's good to have you here. Good to have Sarjo Barrow. And obviously, Binto Bantaba Network building a reputation for itself very quickly, very rapidly. Thank you.
Thank you. Binto Bantaba Network, I'm talking to the community now. Please, our motto is what? Respect. If you're going to comment, make sure your words are clean. They are educative, they are productive. That will benefit us. If not, guess what? The team is down there, you will get blocked. So before we move on, we're here to talk about Truth, Reconciliation, and Reparations Commission. First of all, I know my view will not be in it, but let me tell you what was my observation in the entire thing. First of all, I will give a shout out to the translators. So, but my favorite guy is, you know, the sign language guy. He was the one that was really, really, he was the one that was perfect. Nobody ever rectified him. Even when they said, tinky tanka. Tinky tanka. Are you guys thinking what I'm thinking? Like tinky tanka. I was amazed that, I was amazed sign language have tinky tanka in it. But anyway, I'll give a shout out to them. Can you guys give me their names? I love them. Mwah. So, Brother Sarjo.
Yes.
Before we go into the conversation, we will kindly want you to walk us through the mandate of the TRRC.
Well, it's an act by our National Assembly and then to take a holistic and then historical account of the 22 years, I believe, from 1994 July up to January 2017, President Jammeh and then his administration to document and then investigate human rights abuses and then other abuses that happened during the 22 years as alleged. So that is the broad mandate, and then make a historic account, a truthful account of what really happened from July 1994 to January 2017. And then at the end of their mandate to make a report and then a recommendation regarding their findings.
Okay. Brother Joe, please, in 5 minutes, could you give us your whole review about the TRRC?
Thank you, Binto. But before getting into the TRRC, I want to, and this is connected. This afternoon, I saw on the papers that President Barrow is talking about limiting the democratic space post-December 4th. And I think all three Gambians should be concerned about that, because it also speaks directly to the issues of never again that the TRRC has set itself to achieve. I think those statements were unfortunate and is a direct threat to the democracy of this country. But to say in terms of my views about the TRRC and the extent to which we have come, I want to go back to 2017, just immediately after the change happened. I remember I wrote an article published on The Guardian where I asked few questions. And one of the questions was, how do countries with no history of political transition survive one when it comes along? How will Gambians ensure that their transition from authoritarianism to democracy, and what is at stake at the critical moment? And the question then again was, can Gambians survive the post-Yahya Jammeh era, and are they ready to move on into a new Gambia, and what would this new Gambia be like? And so in that article, what I was trying to say was that all Gambians, even members of the old regime, should put hand on deck to work to transform Gambia into this new Gambia that we wanted. So like Sarjo said, the TRRC was set up with a mandate to impartially look at the past history, and also to see how best those issues could be addressed. And so for me today, right now as we were discussing, I think they are writing the report, and we'll be expecting to see the report and then the recommendation. But so far, I think what the TRRC has been one of the most transformative institutions in this country, primarily due to the kind of debate it generates. And I think me and Lamin, that's why usually we disagree strongly, because one, they think they are partisan, political, and I am not partisan. So sometimes our views would not collide. But then at the end of the day, the idea was to ensure that the violations, the known violations that were carried out, including the abuses, the tortures, the killings, could be brought to light in a way that was done in an impartial way, to ensure that the witnesses, the stories that have been told by the witnesses are heard clearly, and also the issues of the victims are addressed sufficiently. So I also think that the first part, which was the truth hearing, I mean, the truth in the TRRC, I think, still people are debating about it, debating whether, the truth has been established. But I think based on the recommendation and what the commission has written, then one can also further discuss those issues. But at this minute, what we have seen on TV and what we have heard is that violations took place in this country. People were murdered, some were arrested unjustly, and so many other institutional failures that happened. Those things were at least registered. So the other aspect of the commission's work was the reparation, ensuring that the victims, the very people that suffered these atrocities, were kind of supported in a way that it will restitute them. That is the state taking responsibility of ensuring that the very people that were victimized, where their issues would be readdressed, and sure it is very difficult to return someone's loved one if they've been murdered, or someone that was shot and and injured. But what you can do is to ensure that you support them in a live measures that will address that. So for those issues, I think we have seen some complications, especially in terms of how victims are also reacting to the issues. The other day we've seen one of the victims returning a check, claiming that what he's been given is not enough to take care of himself. So in terms of reparation, I think discussions are still there, and those issues are there. But then the other part, which I feel was the final stage of the TRRC, was supposed to be the reconciliation element. And of course, in terms of the activities we have seen within the TRRC, where individuals reconcile among themselves, we have also seen where some communities were approached. But at the end of the day, for me, reconciliation needs to be defined in a way that reflects the general political well-being of the country. And that is, how do we ensure that the divides that has emerged or generated as per means of addressing Jammeh's legacy could also be handled. I think in terms of reconciliation, outside the activities that we have seen, especially Sana Sabali, Edward Singate, I think in terms of the broader political discourse, we are seeing more of people moving on different sides rather than coming together. And then there's a need to ask, why is that the case? Is it because that we did not properly assess or identify the real reasons or the real issues shaping our political discussions, or is it that we are focused entirely on a narrow definition of the mandate which focus on human rights accountability, rather than also looking at one of the most important elements that could put the society together? And for me, I've always argued that what happened in the past was state abusing its authority, and therefore the state must be held responsible, and therefore the state must ensure that the very atrocities that were committed will never happen again, but also ensure that the issues of the public are kind of addressed. But here, this is the point also where the state need to build greater strength, greater relationship or trust between the people and them, because the violations were committed by state agents. And therefore, if we're talking about reconciliation also, we need to talk about the issues of building trust, ensuring that the people, the public itself build trust in the system. Without it, I think, it will be difficult. But so far, so good. I think the TRRC has been, on one side, been able to show or even start a narrative. I think that needs to continue, and that will continue in terms of human rights violation and those that are responsible and what needs to be done. And I think it has also started another conversations around justice, reconciliation, and all those different issues. For us as academics and people interested in documenting Gambian history, I think these are issues that we can learn and look at from, so far in terms of the TRRC process.
Okay, thank you. Tamba.
Yes.
Your views, please. 5 minutes.
For me, with TRRC, I have had a problem in a few areas, but the most important part is the legal foundation of the TRRC itself. So what people did, what people didn't do, whether it's true or it's false, I cannot independently verify. The problem with laws, TRRC is an act of parliament, so it's a legal instrument, a statute. And when you pass an act like that, it has to be compliant with the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution of the Gambia. So it's good to investigate these things. In a way, sometimes I've thought Jammeh government, the junta, should have carried out a TRRC prior to them transitioning into the civilian government. But maybe they decided that, what's happened under the PPP rather, the alleged atrocities, we're not going to preoccupy ourselves with that. We're just going to move on with development footprint. Let's just do the Commission of Inquiry and move on with it. So coming to TRRC, passed in December 2017, which basically has got the parameters marking the exact days that Jammeh led the Gambia, 22nd July 1994 to 21 January 2017. Now, the legal foundations are, the Constitution says something, and it's very clear, categorically clear, and the language is in simple terms as well in the Constitution, as for what commission can be set up against the president and what commission can be set up against employees of the government. And when we say the government, we all know the three arms of government. But in the service, public service, you have the security and civil service. So when you set up those, there's no problem with passing the TRRC Act itself, because you can still investigate the Jammeh government and not be able to look into Jammeh's activities, because under the Constitution, if we're being honest, the commission should not have looked at Jammeh's affairs at all. They could have looked at other government departments and not Jammeh, because that's what the Constitution says. So in my view, the TRRC directly clashes with the immunity provisions in our Constitution. The immunity provisions, some of which are entrenched, say there's no commission that should be entertained to look at the period of the junta. All right? It didn't say you cannot charge people directly for murder. They're two separate things. It says no commission shall be set to investigate the activities of the junta for their acts or omissions while they were in office. There's an argument of official duties or official hours. We'll leave that to another day. And then after the junta, there's another section, section 69, which says the omissions or acts of the serving president shall not be looked into by any commission, should not be entertained. That's the language it says. Any attempt to set a commission against the president of the country should not be entertained by any institution or any law court. That's what our Constitution says. So therefore, if you set the TRRC Act to look at Jammeh's era, you have to make sure it looks at every other person except the president if you're going to look at 1996 to 2017. Or even if you investigate it, you should have absolutely no powers to institute any legal proceedings against the president. Either that's Jammeh Commission or the TRRC. That's what our Constitution says. So if you have a problem, if you think you've seen Jammeh murdering somebody, because murder and genocide and other things sometimes cannot be indemnified, then you have to charge them directly. You cannot set a commission to investigate those, because the Constitution says categorically clear that you cannot entertain any commission to look at the junta. And after the junta's period, you cannot entertain any commission to look at the president's office, section 69. The coalition had the chance to repeal that section of the Constitution or to amend it, or to vote and get a 2/3 majority to say, yes, we want to institute action against the serving president of the country. But you know why they didn't do that? Because that then would have dug a hole for Barrow. You understand? So they didn't want to amend that section, because that meant if they took section 69 out, I could suddenly start suing Barrow for building 2 mansions in Mankamankunda in just the space of 3 years. All right? I could suddenly sue Barrow for Haruna Najjar. I could suddenly sue, in fact, I could posthumously start legal action against the PPP government. Some of them are alive. I could sue OJ for certain things. I could sue Bakar Bunja Dabo for certain things. So when we do something, we need to be consistent with our laws. And this is where the problem comes with the TRRC. The legal foundations have been breached. The appointments have been questionable. The remit of the TRRC has been questionable. That's my problem. But we get into detail at some point. So when we set these acts, let's forget who Jammeh was for 1 minute. We need to make sure if the Constitution says somebody is immune, that they're immune. If we lift the veil of immunity, it will affect Jammeh, it will affect Yankuba Toure, it will affect Edward Singate, but very soon it will affect the Chief Justice of the Gambia. Bear in mind, he went against the government orders to buy a V8. It will affect Adama Barrow, it will affect everyone else. If that's the direction we want to go, we cannot then change when Barrow leaves office and say, oh no, the Supreme Court was wrong that time. We cannot punish Barrow. We cannot investigate Ousainou Darboe. We cannot investigate the next person. So whatever we do now, we've got to be mindful that what my favorite football coach says, Sir Alex Ferguson, he always says, whatever you do, if it's bad, it'll come back to bite your bum one day. That's a football quote. So we've got to be careful of changing the law to presumably punish the people we don't like.
Okay.
Because if we think the immunity is not valid, one day, some of these people who are enjoying the persecution of Jammeh and his supporters, or the persecution of Ousainou Darboe and the 3 years Jotna, because of their right to protest, one day is going to come and bite them as well.
Okay.
You know?
Thank you.
So we've got to be consistent.
Okay. Thank you, Barrow. Your views, and the immunity too. If you can add both.
Thank you. I have to admit, TRRC, I haven't watched it that much. I think only a few proceeding, and then sometimes I lose appetite. But from a personal point of view, I do appreciate their work, and then at least in my opinion, it brought out some of the things that have been alleged to happen in the Gambia. And then even us living in the Gambia, you think you know a lot, but TRRC somehow exposes some of the fallacies or the notions that I hold, of Gambians. Now, whether the allegations made during the hearing, whether they're truth or not, that is yet to be tested. But at least the fact that, the allegation and then the accounts, they come out. And then some of the objective facts, if we were to take that, for instance, TRRC went on mass grave digging and whatnot. So to me, there are some claims, how they happen, and then responsibility will be discussed later. But I believe it exposes and then let us know at least something did happen in Gambia from 94 to 2017. And then in that part, as a Gambian, as a human being, I'm very grateful, and then that would at least, educate us to plan better for the future and avoid that. So I think TRRC, regardless of all the flaws, it's a good thing to give us a count. Now, I would agree with Mr. Tamba to some extent. Now, as a jurist, if you want to look at the legal setup, TRRC is an act of parliament, and then I review the act. The copy I have, if that is the copy, which is the TRRC Act itself, the 24 pages, if it hasn't changed, looking at it, I have some problem as a lawyer in the sense that the mandate required TRRC to investigate, but not only that, it gives them a lot of powers, to subpoena people, compel witnesses to testify, and then some of the provision there, they would run foul of the Constitution without any safeguard. That's where I have issue with as a lawyer, and then regardless of what people do, I think the rule of law is there to protect everybody for the future. That I agree with. And then in my opinion, I thought Gambia TRRC would have modeled after South Africa. If we wanted to do a complete truth and reconciliation, meaning we want to know exactly what happened, give complete immunity to everyone except for prosecutions that have commenced before the commission is set up. Meaning they could apply for amnesty except for, human rights violation. Let's say if we start prosecuting people before we set up the commission itself, those should continue. But once the commission is set up, like what South Africa did and other countries did trade off, their TRRC process was, we expect everyone to come here, and then we expect you to tell the truth. And then we are cognizant of South African Constitution that says that you cannot compel someone to self-incriminate themselves without giving them protection. Now, what happened in South African model is that if you want to call Sarjo to come and testify, and then you want to compel me, and then you have reason to believe my testimony would elicit criminal act that could incriminate me, and then violated my right, they have to inform the Ministry of Justice, the Attorney General, and then let him know that this is problematic for Sarjo. And what we are asking, we would require transactional or full immunity for his testimony, and then he can testify. But if he lies, they have perjury laws to enforce against you. That way they can use your testimony. So in my opinion, I don't see a provision in that in the TRRC Act, and then people are being forced and then to come and testify. Now, I don't blame TRRC for that. I blame people who have representation, who have lawyers, and then they let that happen. That's not on TRRC. That's just bad lawyering on the on the part of the lawyer. But what I expect as a government, everything you are setting up, it should be fair. The premises should be fair. That I agree with that. Now, I'm not going to go further and say that, what Mr. Tamba, my brother, is saying, like the Constitution provides some immunities, and then regardless of where you stand, they are in the Constitution. They are not statutory immunities. Those things are in the Constitution. It doesn't allow us to examine the acts of the junta. I think that's before July 22nd to 96. That's what it says, if you look at it. Those things are there. We can remove them, or if we don't want to remove them, they are there. But those things are there. In my opinion, the way I looked at TRRC Act, I don't think it's per se looking at Yaya Jammeh, but it's looking at the government what happened. Yes, he's the executive, he's the leader of the executive, but that's what the mandate is looking at, the human rights violation that happened. It's not like this commission is set up specifically to look at Yahya Jammeh as a president. That's not how I read to TRRC, because the mandate is to investigate, alleged violation that happened from 94 to 2008. Yes, it happened during his reign, and then they are looking at it holistically. And then as part of that narrative and investigation, things will be said or alluded to that says that, he might have sanctioned it. That's a question for another day. But I think that's how I looked at it. And then with reference to in as much as I agree with Mr. Tamba on that, like the Constitution, put a prescription on looking into any activities of the junta. I would agree with that, but I don't think regarding Section 69, it says you cannot set up a commission. What it says, it actually immunizes, almost every democracy does that. You cannot bring civil or criminal proceedings against presidents when they are sitting, except things they did before. And then I think that's still there. If you wanted to bring criminal proceeding against Yahya Jammeh as a person, yes, that protection is there. And Mr. Tamba is right, we can remove the law, but that's in the Constitution. And then what he did while he's in power, he's immunized from all his acts. Whether, because I don't see anything in 69 that says anything about official act. It only says, in performance of his duty. Now it's for our courts to interpret what that means. We can disagree on that, and then that depends on, what court you have at the time period. Even in every jurisprudence, courts change. Slavery was one time legal, it became illegal. Separation was legal here in the US, and then another court came, it says it's, not legal. So those things would be a difference in opinion. But overall for me, I applaud the initiative to have TRRC. We need to know what happened, but I believe we could have set up better mechanism to protect the aftermath of TRRC, because in my view, from a legal point of view, this is not, I'm not thinking about emotions and others. Anyone who testified, I don't know whether they protest in person or not, I'm not aware of that, but assuming you force them and then they were subpoenaed to come and testify against their will. Those testimony, even if recommendations were passed for prosecution, it's going to be problematic unless we want to throw the Constitution in the garbage.
Yeah.
How are you going to proceed against those people? Now that testimony, we can have really, really bad people and we cannot do anything with it because the process was tainted initially. That's the trouble. I don't know how that will be controlled, but that's the only thing that I'm concerned with in the future.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I think, both of them, they are very, legal minded, and I think they are very, they know their area. But I also want us to also look at the TRRC from one perspective of why it was established. So there are two questions here. Why was the TRRC established, and what are we seeing now? Which is speaking to some of the issues and some of the challenges that we are looking at. And I think if we go to the why question, the TRRC is part and parcel of what we call a broad transitional justice mechanism. That one was to address the past injustices, but secondly, to ensure that is also part of what they call the constitutional review process, which is also to ensure that there was a new constitution. And then, we talk about security sector reform, because the security were the main people that were very much involved in some of the atrocities that we were talking about. Of course, under the control and direction of civilian authorities. These are issues that also need to be pushed before we move further. And I mean, if we are to discuss the TRRC, then we need to situate it from its original departure point. Then, of course, along the way, and this is where I agree with them to a large extent, that perhaps the design of the TRRC and our expectation at the upfront in terms of its processes and procedures, change a little bit, especially given the fact that, the government went to South Africa and Sierra Leone to learn from their processes. And at the end of the day, we saw a process where you also have a lead counsel. I don't know how you call it in the legal terms, whether it's questioning or cross-examining. For me, I saw that as problematic, because at the end of the day, it might usurp the powers from the commissioners and then concentrate it on one person. And I think for me, even if you look at the act, you might not see that position within the act. They might correct me. So the late addition can, of course, change perhaps the direction of the commission, and where we see it to focus more on criminal accountability and all those things based on the some of the procedures that we were seeing. For me, I think those are my criticism, because I thought from the onset, because I was part of the process from the onset, in terms of the consultations that we were taking, one thing that the people, and then even the surveys that we conducted, where people were talking about that idea of national reconciliation, but ensuring that there was justice. And so today, if we look at the TRRC, then you will see, then people will start raising these questions of impartiality, because these were issues that people were raising during the consultation process, to say that the TRRC process must go in a way that is showing the scene to be targeting at someone or being a witch hunt. These were things that have been documented, and people were saying that because people wanted a process that was as clear and as transparent. And the other aspect where I think our process is very, what would I call it, innovative, unlike the South African model that Sarjo was referring to, is the fact that we had lead counsel, because perhaps the idea of a lead counsel is to support and lead witnesses to deliver their statement, but of course, maybe in the modalities of how that was carried out might have been the problem in terms of the questioning and so forth. So for me, I think that is still one problem that we need to identify and discuss, because I think it is very, very, very critical to the entire discussions around the TRRC. But I also think, for me, this is where I am biased, because I've been thinking that a new Gambia must be a new country where the laws have transformed, where people, that have everybody. This is a small country. People know who have violated, who does what. Those are easy things to to handle, because like anything that is happening in State House, people tend to hear. Why can't people understand what was happening? But then the primary goal of the TRRC was to transition us. That's why you also have the Constitution and all the other reforms to transition us from that period to a new period. And that's why when the constitutional reform failed, when the security sector reform got stalled, when today we are hearing President Barrow talking about directing the Inspector General of Police to, post-December to deny people permit, I mean, then the question for me is that whether the political goal, and TRRC is political, and then the political goal that we have established to transition the Gambia from the past to this current present, whether we have achieved that or not. I think this is the question that people must start asking. But then the other question is that in the design of the TRRC process, how consultative was it? Because for me, my argument is that the TRRC, unlike many other countries, where in Sierra Leone, for instance, where they had to go through war, and then after that they established the commission through an agreement. In Liberia, it followed the same process. In South Africa, also came through negotiation between the government that was leaving and also the new government that came into being. To what extent did that happen in the case of the Gambia? We did not see that. Then from the onset, if APRC, for instance, and I think that's their position, I don't know whether because they feel like they have been marginalized to an extent, they have not been very much involved in terms of the process from the onset. And their argument has always been that, oh, this is a witch hunt. But of course, one of the other problems is, I don't think the TRRC was meant for that. The TRRC was meant to establish people. But of course, part of the political narrative, it has become that. And today, all that we hear is Yaya Jammeh. The TRRC should not be about Yaya Jammeh. It should be about human rights violation. It should be about reconciliation. It is about reparations. And then we should ensure that anybody that has violated the rights of any Gambian, whoever you are, whether Jammeh, Barrow, Jau, whatever, you ensure that it's the rule of law. You follow the due process. Why are you telling me that in terms of, I'm speaking from a political sense, why would you tell me today that, oh, because this one has done this, that, and the Constitution said that, he needs to be protected and therefore we should protect him? For what? Violated people's right. Don't the same people have the right to be protected under the Constitution? And I think this is where my disagreement with Tamba and, sometimes others is from. My position is that human rights violation must be treated as a criminal and it must be addressed as that as per the laws of this country.
Okay, thank you. Tamba.
Yes.
The composition of the TRRC was entirely Gambians. Regions, religion, youths, and etc. were all represented.
Yeah.
Was this selection fair?
No. It's a short answer to it. To expand it, again, we'll go back to the Constitution. The Constitution says, Sarjo is my colleague. legal luminary. He knows about the conflict of interest. In the United States, there's a lot of case law, unlike Gambia, where we're still struggling for case law for some of these things. All right. In the United Kingdom, case law is rampant because their legal system is dominated by common law, which has been going on for 500 years, 550 years. So they've got every single thing you can imagine, unless it's come from new technology, has been tried and tested in this country. Yes, I agree with Sarjo entirely that the interpretation of law can change sometimes. Sometimes new material comes and you'll have to change it. But at the moment, what we have is the Constitution of the Gambia. Whether you like it or not, that's what we have right now. Now, in the UK, I don't like the immigration law because it's stopping me bringing my family members here. It's stopping so many people from doing it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go and break the immigration law. Because if I break it, I'll get in trouble and I'll not blame anyone. It's the law of the land. You don't have to like it. You understand? So we go back to the composition of TRRC, from the chairman right down to the last person. In this country, there are criminal procedure rules. Part of those criminal procedure rules is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is key. In our constitution, 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, Section 200, Section 201, talks about the composition of a commission of inquiry. Clearly states that to be a chairman of the commission, or the main commissioner, whatever name you call the person who's in charge of it, in terms of administratively or politically, that person who chairs the commission or is the commissioner of the commission should be qualified to be a high court judge or would have served as a high court judge. And to be a high court judge in the Gambia, the criteria is there. That criteria that's been set to become a high court judge was not met by Chairman Dr. Lamin. That's where we start. The selection of the TRRC, we start from the top and go down. He wasn't a judge in the Gambia. Has he the requisite qualifications to be a high court judge in the Gambia? No, none that we know of, unless he's done it privately and it's never been published that he's practiced law for 5 years or he's served as a high court judge. Do you understand? So let's move from the chairman. His qualification to be chairman of TRRC is under intense scrutiny. We believe he's not competent. Secondly, you have the executive secretary of the TRRC, Dr. Baba Gali Jallow. Was he qualified under the criminal procedure rules, simple principles of law? He's had an open beef with Jammeh. They had a fallout and he fled to the United States. In any legal system in the world, jurisprudence, any judiciary, he will not be allowed to sit on any case that has something to do with Jammeh because of conflict of interest. And in the United Kingdom, when we're looking at judicial review, we have actual bias and apparent bias. The TRRC appointment of Baba Gali Jallow has got an actual bias and it benefits from apparent bias. He should not have been the executive secretary. We go down to Adelaide Sources, the deputy chairman. Her daughter has had a fallout with Jammeh. And her relative, I don't know what her relation is with Sana Sabali, is another interest of the TRRC. She shouldn't have been in that commission. And as we heard from her own pronouncements, again, this is a brilliant point that Sait Matty mentioned about involving all sections of community when you want reconciliation. If you want people to speak the truth, make them involved, get them in the process. Now, Adelaide Source clearly said when they had a meeting in London that the Jolas and Fonyi are the obstacle to reconciliation in New Gambia. Why do you think they were an obstacle? Because when the TRRC was set up, there is this saying that the military officers, security officers who were from Fonyi, or there was a Jola hegemony in Jammeh's government. So if you wanted people to reconcile, a very important part of that reconciliation will be people from Fonyi. One of them should have been a commissioner. One of them should have been a deputy chairman. One of them should have been executive secretary. Involve them in a significant position where people from the APRC or people from Fonyi will think, hang on, we have somebody we can identify with in the commission. So therefore, we don't think there's going to be collusion behind the scenes. Do you understand? And then we have the investigating lead of the TRRC, Alaji Sait Barrow, picked up guns, wants to go and shoot Jammeh and kill him, wants to overthrow Jammeh government. Again, he should not have sat on any case. He should not have had any dealings with anything to do with Jammeh. Gambia is not short of competencies. In fact, this is where, again, Jammeh excels. He's educated several people, you understand, via the University of the Gambia. Under his tenure, we have a law school. We have so many judges come up. We don't have a shortage of skilled people who can sit on the TRRC, who had no falling out with Jammeh, who didn't work for Jammeh or with Jammeh. There are Gambians internationally who didn't fall out with Jammeh. Or if you think there's going to be bias, appoint somebody, a judge from the Commonwealth. Jammeh is not there, so you can't say Jammeh is influencing the Commonwealth judge. He will have no relations with anyone. He will have absolutely no inclinations politically. There are allegations that the chairman of TRRC is a bona fide UDP member. I'm not sure. These are allegations. But I'm not sure. I don't want to hold that against him. Again, you cannot take somebody like that to sit on any case that has to do with Jammeh. Impartiality, the TRRC Act, let me read what it says to you. And the first paragraph of the Act puts impartiality in the first 2 or 3 sentences. Now, impartiality in law, or if you flip it the other side, conflict of interest in law is a very, very serious principle. If you breach that, you will not sit on any of that. The cases will have absolutely no legal foundation, no grounds to bring about any legal proceedings. In the United Kingdom, the Grenfell Tower, when it killed several people, the first person they wanted to appoint to be the chairman of the inquiry didn't have any direct relations with any of the victims, didn't have any direct relations with any of the government officials or Theresa May, who was our prime minister at the time. The faintest link that George had with Grenfell was that at some point in the past, he did consult with a company that does cladding. Cladding is the insulation material you put on the old tower blocks in this country to make the tower blocks efficient in terms of heating. He did consult with them a long time ago. So he had no links with the government, no link with the victims, no link with the prime minister. And they said no, because he did consulting before for a company that provides insulation material. Insulation material at Grenfell Tower was the flammable material that lit up the tower and killed several people.
Okay.
He did consultation years ago and they said, no, you're not qualified. So you see how remote these links are for you to get disqualified in the United Kingdom. Let alone somebody who's openly had a beef with Jammeh, Baba Gali Jallow, somebody who's openly a UDP member, somebody who's openly picked up guns on 30 December 2014 to go and shoot Jammeh and his colleagues and bring about change of government. You cannot do that no matter what you do. Just be careful. What Lawyer Sarjo Barrow said is true. We've got to be careful. We can change these laws, fine. The law changes based on new material, based on new interpretation, based on the era as well as time goes on. But when it changes, there will be consequences. The TRRC Act itself has immunity for the commissioners. Just imagine, Sait Matty becomes president in 2022, and he thinks, I don't like SFR. I don't like his conduct because he's too pompous. I'm going to remove the immunity in the TRRC Act that indemnified the commissioners so that I can punish SFR. One day, Sait Matty, when he resigns from office, will face the same lifted veil. The veil will not cover it. So we can remove it. I have no problems with that. As a lawyer, as long as it's gone through Parliament, it's gone through the right process of enacting or amending or repealing, I don't have problems with that. You don't have to like the law, but you have to follow it.
Okay.
So we've got to be extremely careful. I think the composition should have had a prominent person from Fonyi because they kept accusing. And again, I agree with Sarjo Barrow 100% that TRRC was necessary. It was good to investigate it. We can complain about the legal foundation of it. We can complain about the composition. We can complain about its conduct or its end product, but we cannot complain with the fact that I myself have learned a lot about Gambians via the TRRC. So in some ways, it's a blessing in disguise. And in some ways, I think it freed Jammeh of so many shackles that would have been on him, a lot of things that he would have been blamed for. Now people know people where rogue elements were doing stuff. Yes, Jammeh might have known some things. Yes, maybe he ordered the who knows. But we know people who were involved. And some of them, when you ask them, whether you've actually spoken to Jammeh directly, no. Have you ever heard Jammeh give you executive order directly? No. So who told this executive order? Or I heard from somebody who heard from somebody who heard from somebody.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
So we've got to be careful.
Okay. Mr. Barrow.
Yes.
What about that composition?
Unlike Lamin, I think I know Mr. Cisse by name. And then, of course, Isafal and then the lead counsel and some of the lawyers over there, I think the ladies. I know those people. And then regarding the composition itself, my understanding, what Mr. Tamba is saying, I understand where he's coming from, saying that it requires someone who is, has the prerequisite to be appointed as a high court judge. But this is my distinction, my takeaway. My understanding is TRRC was not set up by the president under Section 200. And then this is how you looked at it. Section 200 allowed the president to set up any commission. If, TRRC was, enacted by Barrow using Section 200, in my opinion, Tamba would have a very good argument regarding the qualification of the commissioners as he elect here, because I don't know their background. So he might be in a better position to say that. But TRRC is an act of parliament that says, we are, establishing this, organization or institution to look into what happened within a time frame. So it is that act that will require, what the composition is and then what the requirement is, as long as it doesn't run afoul of certain, originating statute, which is the Constitution itself. So in my opinion, I think unless the act specify X, Y, and Z should be the commissioner, and then the person appointed as the commissioner did not meet those requirements, then it would be problematic. But I haven't looked into that. I haven't, but my belief is, and then I stand to be corrected, but I believe whomever they appoint to TRRC, they would at least a little bit, they would review the act and they know that they meet the requirement. Of course, I have seen the government fumble many times in following procedure, but I would err on the side of caution and believe that all the appointment, at least they meet the requirement under the TRRC Act, because I don't think they come under Section 22 of the Constitution itself. Now, regarding conflict of interest, he's absolutely right about that. That's a whole different ballgame. And without knowing the background, like if the whole point is, from my point of view, and then what I would prefer, if you set up something like TRRC, and then it's going to be very sensitive in the Gambia, you don't even want the appearance of impropriety anywhere. That is important for every Gambian, because you want legitimacy in the institution, and then you want people to respect and follow it. So if, in my opinion, I would think if they are making an appointment, it should go through vetting. And then if they go through vetting, and then I expect the MOJ, Ministry of Justice, to be involved. If you see that there would be apparent conflict, or even actual conflict, they should at least rescind those appointments. Or even if there is no actual conflict, or conflict is not even apparent, but there is some kind of appearance of impropriety, the rule is to err on the side of caution and put someone there that people would at least trust and then have legitimacy in the institution. And then Mr. Tamba is right about that, because at the end of the day, you are doing this for the public, and then you want the public to see legitimacy in the institution. So it's important for those serving that institution to at least, in public eye, be qualified and then not considered to be biased. But the truth is, every Gambian has implicit bias, and Gambia is very small. If we, unless, my opinion is, unless it is actual conflict or conflict that is too apparent, the rest, as long as they disclose it and then safeguards are met, we should allow them. Because if you want to rule out even the appearance or of conflict in Gambia, we would end up having no one to sit on any commission because it's a small country. Somehow everyone is related either by marriage, by tradition. We are related. At some point, the stick would point if you want to investigate everything. So no one could sit there. To me, the problem is disclosure. Some of these things, if you make application, you want people to disclose. You want to know their view. And it's just like judges. They sometimes have conflict. You ask them to recuse themselves. They would say, no, I wouldn't recuse myself. Whether that will become problematic in appeal process is there. But if the conflict is to actual conflict, they have to recuse. Those you cannot go about that. But if you wanted to remove everyone because they know someone, or they might know someone, or they might hold a view they said 20 years ago, in the context of Gambia, I'm not saying other places, it would be difficult to have anyone to sit anywhere. We wouldn't even have judges. So to me, the objective is disclosure. If you do not disclose, and they will later find out when you are required to disclose, that should be problematic. That's how I looked at it. Okay. But I haven't looked into their appointment or the composition, but I would assume, stand to be corrected, that they actually follow the act, what it says for them to sit in those places.
Mr. Yao.
Yeah, I think I will concur with them in terms of the conflict of interest bit. I think they explained it pretty well, but I think also we need to separate, the commissioners from the staff. If you look at the act, and I think Mr. Barrow, maybe if you have time, if you look at the act, I think it talks about the fact that the commissioners will be selected and all those things. So those ones are kind of recognized by the act, I think. But then it also talks about the executive secretary and then the appointment of the staff. So the other people that you've been mentioning, the lead counsel, the executive secretary, I mean, it should be seen from the staff of the commission. And I don't know. I mean, I think still conflict of interest could still apply. But then at least the role and the role of the commissioner should be separated, at least to give context to what is also happening. So and to add to in terms of this selection, if you look at the way that the commissioners were selected, now I'm going to speak to practicalities as it unfolded because we're also part of the process during the consultation. But before that, I even tried to make a statement before, but I did not explain it properly. And I think when Sarjo was talking, especially in terms of the legal, it really clicked well. Explaining that the commission was not established under the 200 section 200, but rather it's a standalone or a parliamentary. It's a legal document because I think Parliament also, they have the right to make laws and also so they do that in terms of the legal. But then one of the problems, and then this is where I was trying to compare our TRRC process and with other countries, where like for instance in South Africa, in Sierra Leone, or even Liberia, in West Africa here. It had to, then there was no state basically. The state entirely collapsed. So what happened was that it was these two warring factions that came together, sit, and then say that this is the agreement, this is what we need to do to restore sanity and whatever. And even in the case of South Africa, we've also seen, the process that led to even establishment of the TRRC Commission when we were looking at the transitional justice. But but for me, in terms of the analysis, I look at the TRRC within our context as a victor's TRRC because it came through a democratic change of government. And I think here, this is where Lamin Tamba is also trying to argue that since it is a government that is also based on a constitution, therefore perhaps any other process that needs to be established needs to focus on that. And this is where I said it is a bit complicated in terms of the relationship between the commission vis-a-vis the law, but then the general idea is to ensure that we transition from this period to a new period. And I think that objective of having a new Gambia should be the guiding focus because that was the intention. But today, all those intentions, the whole entire process has been stopped. But in terms of the selection, we saw that in the selection process of the commissioners, there are different categories of commissioners that have been selected. Some were appointed, like I think the chairman himself was selected by the president through the recommendation of the minister. But then some of the other commissioners, you see Imam C and other imams, there are groups within society, that nominated those people. Like some of them also came from the regions, like they were identified by the region itself. So the selection process of the commissioner, even the youth commissioner, for instance, he was selected through a youth process. And Commissioner Jones was selected through a civil society process. The other imams and even the bishop, we can say, from the faith community. So in terms of the selection of these commissioners, these are the most important elements, because at the end of the day, they are responsible for the functioning and the way that the TRRC is conducted. They are the ones that are doing a leading investigation. Everybody else that is working, they are working to assist them. But at the end of the day, the decision-making process of the commission should be done by the commission, because I think that's what the law says. And others are just staff of the commission. And of course, we can argue about the staff. But then in terms of the selection of those people, regional participation were there. West Coast had representative, all the different regions. There is representation from that. If we follow the process, you will see those kind of stuff. And then the idea was also to make it as more diverse as possible, to ensure that everybody see themselves within the process, because the goal was to ensure that the real activities that happen in this country were identified and address all the social economic issues. But of course, where I will also agree is that I think that the problem with the TRRC is not the commission selection and all those things, but has been in terms of its operation. And where I was expecting that the commission, like the South Africa or otherwise, will have the witness to come and say they are part of the story, and then another witness come and say they are part of the story, and then at the final, the commissioners will decide and make a recommendation out of all these things, and also the investigations that they have carried out. But where I argue that, and this is where I have issues from the onset with the role of the lead counsel, because my argument was that it might, the way that it started and it will continue, it might withdraw the real powers of the commission. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we saw, where we had a very visible lead commission and a very laid back, commissioners, where most of the decisions or certain aspects, as we see on public TV, were coming from that aspect, from the legal team. And for me, it's problematic. But then why do we have it that way? Is because then I think this is where also the other limitation is, where they try to narrowly look at the TRRC as, from that accountability, from that human rights violation, which they narrowly define it. But for me, I think it was bigger than that. Because human rights violation is not only about the tortures and all those things, but it's also about the socio-economic issues. And that today is defining this modern day Gambia. People that lost their land, people that lost many other things. These are issues that could have been brought. But for me, like I said, as much as these processes are there are issues that when it was put into play, it turned out in a way that is also creating all these different narratives that we are having today.
Mr. Joe, when some of these people come to testify, they don't really feel comfortable, or they feel restricted by the lead counsel. Some were given some people complain that some were given the platform to speak whatever they want to say, and some were restricted on their testimony. What would you say to that?
But I think those were observations that were genuine, and I've even discussed it in one of the articles that I wrote in terms of the complicated.
Can you guys hear him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The complicated quest for truth and reconciliation, the quasi-judicial nature of our TRRC process. And sometimes I think this is where Sarjo was also referring to the fact that people go into the commission without their lawyers and all those things as well. Because for me, that's why I initially had questions, as to whether this kind of model that we are implementing, whether it will be able to get us to the truth that we really want, or whether human agency will not play in part to ensure, it's not maybe by intention, but also based on interactions and all those things, we might be swayed to the other aspect. But of course, there are things that also we need to highlight when we are discussing transitional justice, but the Truth Commission in this country. We have been, I left this country, I think in 2015 after, today they deny, Tamba sometimes will deny my right for violation, jokingly. But at some point, I had to leave this country like many other before, because I was arrested, I was jailed, and I experienced that. And my case was even mentioned at the TRRC. But I think one of the issues, of course, and then I think they have highlighted that in terms of the composition also, it speaks to some sort of a diaspora. I wouldn't call it a diaspora hegemony, but of course, if you look at the TRRC, whether it's the chairman, executive secretary, the lead counsel, even the Minister of Justice came from the diaspora. And I feel at some point that, I mean, in terms of the way that the process was going, it had carried some sort of a diaspora narrative. And I think this is the point that they were trying to highlight in terms of the conflict of interest, where you had people that were, anti-Jame also occupying the position. And for me, I think that is also problematic in the sense that, those of us that were here, I mean, as much as we saw the violations that Jame did, and as much as we also wanted to ensure that there is justice, we're also cognizant of the fact that the process must be carried in a way that will represent the entirety of Gambia. Of course, we cannot remove the diaspora from the Gambia issue, but a lot of people at some point, the way the TRRC, it seems like sometimes when you have discussion, it seems like the TRRC is speaking, something that is coming from somewhere. But of course, that is the opportunity that the diaspora have in terms of the information that they had. The people on the ground did not have that, and I think Sarjo alluded to that, before. That, I mean, because the whole struggle itself was fought from outside. And so therefore, even the change and everything that took place also came from that. And I think those things were also part of the problems, and that is also contributing to this narrative that we also see.
Thank you. Tamba.
Yes.
What do you say to that? Restriction. Some feel being restricted to speak, to say their testimonies.
Yeah, I mean, Sait is accurate in that respect. And again, he touched on what Barrow is trying to do, despite the fact that the TRRC hasn't even sent its report yet. He's threatening to forfeit people's fundamental freedoms of the right to assemble. Again, that's written in the Constitution quite clearly. As long as you've applied and you want to comply with the law, and there's no history of violence, there's no reason why the government should refuse you a permit to assemble peacefully. Barrow is threatening to take that away from the Gambians. So I think Sait alluded to this fact before, that the reforms would have made TRRC even more valid now with the constitutional change, security service reform. That would have been all in place now, waiting for the TRRC recommendations to come, and then they'll go into full effect. But now, without the new constitution, the government is going to find themselves, even though the recommendations of the TRRC have been made, it'll be difficult to implement some of them because they'll be running head-on collision with the constitution. So yes, I spoke about the commissioner of TRRC, the chairman before. Section 200 didn't set up the act, but when the act is set by parliament, it should not clash with the constitution. So the constitution will give you the skeleton. The meat is provided by an act of parliament. So again, people are scared because of the tone of the lead counsel of the TRRC didn't help matters. Do you understand? If you wanted to go bonkers, berserk, whatever you call exuberant, and you start threatening people, and you're not reading people's fundamental rights before they even come in, it's your choice to come in. You can stay at home, you don't have to come in. But if you come in, you have to speak the truth. And if people come, unless they're doing something ridiculous, the tone should be investigative. It should not be imposing. It should not be intimidating. It's like gently invite people into the conversation, make them feel warm, make them spill the beans without them knowing they're doing it. Do you understand? Once it becomes gung-ho, macho, you're facing off, it's like either you or myself, then it becomes difficult. People become cagey. And if I'm watching Sarjo today at TRRC, sitting on the spotlight, having a serious confrontation with SFL, I'm going to think, hang on, if I don't have capacity and I go there, SFL is going to destroy me. So therefore, I'm going to be cagey. This is why I said the TRRC Act itself is not illegal until it clashed with the Constitution at some point. The investigation they did is not illegal. What they cannot then do is breach the immunity on the junta and breach the immunity on the civilian president. However, the conduct of it should have been friendly, should have been, oh, I invited you, come on, let's talk about this. So what happened anyway? Where were you at this particular time? Don't you think you should have done this and this and that? You could have spoken to somebody else. Why did you do it? If somebody said to you, go and jump in a well, you knew if you jumped in a well, the chances are you're going to die anyway, even though you want to impress your girlfriend, don't do it. If you know if you don't do it, you're going to be killed. Go across the border. Do you understand? Many people have taken that path. Instead of carrying out illegal orders, they waited until the cover of dark. They walked into Casamance and then found themselves in Senegal and found themselves in Canada or the United Kingdom or United States. It's as simple as that. But I have to believe that most of these things, they're just blaming the system for it. They had control over it. It's the conduct, how matters are conducted, that gives you the level of cooperation or the level of resistance. If you talk to them and draw them in gently, you'll get a lot of cooperation. If you go ballistic, you get resistance, unfortunately. And that's where the TRRC was. A lot of what was said, whether it's true or not, we'll not know. Some of it is said under duress because some people felt seriously pressured. They said certain things that they probably wouldn't have said. They probably didn't happen, but because they are on the gallery, they had to perform to the cameras and to the lead counsel. And the more outrageous it is, the better the audience was. That's how I saw it. That doesn't mean everything that was said was false. No,
was false.
And I want members of those people who are genuine victims to get redress of some sort. And anyone who deliberately and calculatedly knew what you were doing is illegal and the intelligence briefing you had was concocted, you need to sit up and say, look, we concocted against Sait because Sait, Matty, and I shared a girlfriend. I wanted to take the girlfriend. I pretended Sait was doing something so that the NIA can pick him up. Because we heard those stories before. Security agents were being used to settle beef in society. You understand? And that, unfortunately, that's the Gambian that I learned about since 2017 when I go into politics. I didn't know all these things. Now I know. And thankfully, if the APRC comes back into government again, some of these things, it'll be black and white, like I said to you before. In England, even if you want Terransu from my department, they sign for it. They're not going to say, oh, you're just taking Terransu, all 20 butoots. They'll tell you to sign it. Because 50 years later, you cannot turn around and say, I didn't know they were giving me Terransu, or I thought it was a gift. Right? Formality of government, reform of institutions. Again, we're coming back to St. Matty. Those reforms should have been done first. But these people, they were so greedy, they were so angry, all they wanted was to lay their hands on stuff rather than do the actual thing to change the country.
Mr. Barrow, how would you describe the judicial system from July 4 to January 2017 in two areas, the independence and the presence of the Nigerians, judges?
You mean from 2017 to now?
94 to 2017, January 2017, before the inauguration.
Well, my personal belief when I was in Gambia, and then even when I traveled, is that justice, we don't have a fair and impartial justice system under the previous regime of Gambia. That's what my belief was. Now, I have never, tested the judicial system when I was in the Gambia, but that was my belief from hearing from what people were saying. The reason, I made that claim, even though, I wasn't part of it, it's, what I seen from other objective facts, from what other Gambians are saying. When I was in Gambia before traveling, I was naive to understand that, even trial should be done expeditiously. I didn't know that, hearings should take so long. But I have seen people, and then even others in family members that have been arrested, and then never charged, and then detained for a couple of days or few days and being released. Why? Nobody knows. And then I have had Gambians say that, they went to court and then there are no evidence and then they have not been charged. They've been going back and forth until the process ends. And then all they have been alluding to, the judges are not Gambians. And then because they are on contract, usually they want to do what police, whomever hired them to make sure they did not lose their job. That's the perception I have seen. And then while in Gambia, I was, I left Gambia very young, just right after, 12th grade. So I did not have the opportunity to review the judicial system. And then when I was here, I don't pay too much attention to Gambian jurisprudence because my belief, while I was there young, is the courts are not fair. You don't have a fair sort if you go against the state. So I never made it an interest to read any judgment that comes out of the Gambia. I wasn't familiar with Gambian jurisprudence. I don't read any cases that comes in. I'm not even interested in what the Supreme Court has to say. 2017 changed that because there was this new hope that at least for once now, things will be fair, and then every Gambian should have like a fair sort. And then from 2017 to now, what I have seen is that I believe that the courts, they have independence in the sense that in their own thinking, they don't have too much pressure. It's not directly exerted on them from the executive to make certain decisions. Now, that is not to say I agree with every decision that come out of our court. We can all disagree, just like how in the US we see things. But at least in my opinion, I believe that the judges have that independence to do things. There are times they make decisions. I felt like those decisions are informed by, they look at the society and then feel that if they don't make certain decision, it may lead to trouble, or instead of following the law, in my belief, and then I question some of the judgment, especially the Public Order Act, Section 5. I still believe that, I have this belief that any prior restraint on speech or, association or movement is just per se illegal. You cannot ask someone to get a permit before protesting. What you can require of them to notify the police that the time and the place, and then see whether that would conflict with another one. But putting a prior restraint on speech and freedom of assembly, to me, that's just, cohesive. And the Supreme Court upheld it. I think they are under pressure. By then, Gambia was at somehow a conflict, even though, there was no apparent fighting, but they felt like they have to balance the peace, individual right versus, as states, police power to protect the entire public. So I have seen those things, but the takeaway, to answer the question directly, I think, in my opinion, the courts were not free because maybe one, we are not seeing too much public space in the courtrooms, or the judgments that are coming out, people are not aware of them, or people don't have the freedom to talk about it or critique it. So we don't feel the process is fair. And then now that people can actually talk about it and critique judgments, so that contrast make me think that the supposition I had from 94 to 2017 must have some element of truth in it. That's how I look.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. The judiciary, but I want to add something else to it, which is the security, their professionalism, and maybe the promotion. What do you think plus all this? Because we have to talk about this pretty quick. Yes.
Yeah.
The security.
Yes, I think for me, security sector reform has also been central to the wider transitional justice processes that I've been talking about. But before getting into the reform process, but I just want to, say that today our security are working on very difficult conditions. Their welfare are not well taken care of. I will argue in terms of the pay that they are receiving, and also the level of work that they are doing. But all along, I think they are gallant men and women that are contributing and sacrificing to ensure that we live in peace and also in security. And I think we need to commend them on that. And I think the security sector reform, I'm not even sure to what extent as the reform as it was intended, in the sense that we want to transform our security from one that was what they call it highly politicized and personalized to one that is under democratic control. And today we are hearing President Barrow saying that he will instruct the Inspector General of Police when he wins election to deny other parties from, running, from campaigning or organizing political rallies. I mean, then in that sense, I'm not sure to what extent security sector reform has really taken place. But most importantly, also the security sector reform process. And I think this is the narrative where I continue to argue with a lot of people. And I've always said that the security sector in this country has always been under civilian control. It has always been under an elected president. President Jammeh was elected by the people, and therefore he was the one that was in charge of the security. And to say that it was politicized, that they were wearing APRC t-shirts and all those things. I mean, of course, those are factual issues. But in terms of the policies and procedures, is there, to what extent, where the security not in line with what the civilian authority was saying? And I think one of the biggest challenge, and I've written about this in 2018, when President Barrow was making a certain statement, and I said that President Barrow's political rhetoric may drill the security sector reform. And the other day I saw that when the National Guard were released, they had a clash with the police. I mean, for me, when I see all those things, I say that perhaps security sector is not moving. But of course, we have seen that certain policies have been developed in terms of the security sector reform policy. I think there's a one now, security sector reform strategy. There's a national security policy. But the extent to which it's been implemented also is questionable. And I think at one point, the former EU ambassador even criticized the process for saying that it has not been felt by the real Gambians. But of course, I think to address the security sector, one, the narrative must be right. And what is the narrative is that the problem within our security institution is that it is still state-centric, and then therefore it has to move to people-centered. And to ensure that it is people-centered, the Inspector General of Police must not be under the direction of the President to dictate who should give permit or who should not give permit. The law does not give that to the President. The law gives that to the Inspector General of Police. And I think that aspect needs to be stressed. And I think the lawyers here can either support or clarify on that point. But then the other issue is that the security sector reform also. Today we are also seeing some progress, and I must state that Parliament, which has also provided oversight, even the civil society organizations, we've also been engaged in that aspect, although limited, and Parliament is slowly, taking their role in terms of the oversight. So you can say that as much as the layers are there, then the real effects in terms of how people are feeling it might be a problem. But I will not push that to the security itself. I will push that to the political leaders, the civil leaders, who are supposed to provide the tools, the resources, the training necessary to ensure that people deliver. I will always say that the security has always been under civilian control. They always acted under civilian direction. And therefore, if we are talking about security sector reform, we should also start speaking to the civilian authorities and how they are directing the security institution. Because I think we always tend to those people.
What would you say to this claim that the TRRC have reduced the respect that people have for the security, and even themselves, they have the fear to do their job right because they don't want this kind of TRRC to come back at them again?
I mean, for me, I will look at it based on the data that we have collected in terms of the Afrobarometer. We are talking about the military being one of the most trusted institutions in this country, even ahead of the president. The police is even the most trusted and even ahead of the president. As much as people have been angry with in terms of what these institutions or what people from this institution have committed, I mean, still people see them as useful and necessary. And this is where I was talking about who is making those kind of statements. Are they here or they are outside? Sometimes, I mean, that needs to be differentiated, because there's a seeming divide between the understanding of diaspora Gambians and also the understanding of Gambians that are on the ground here. And I think sometimes this is where we tend to clash. So for me, I think the security institutions are still trusted. They are seen as highly valuable. We released a press statement the other day saying that, Gambians want ECOMIC to leave because and for the security of the country to be taken care of by the police and the military. So the trust level is there. Of course, the TRRC has exposed to a large extent that some members, we cannot say today one thing cannot happen at the university and everybody start blaming the entire UTG. That's why I said if we're talking about criminal accountability, those people that have committed the atrocities, those people that have committed the violations, no matter where they are, they must be brought forward and then they answer. If you commit something, you have to answer to the law. Those are the issues that need to be brought. And whoever connected them did that needs to be that. But the institution itself, it was not based on the institutional, they were not acting on the military. The chief of defense staff did not know whether these people were being sent to do things that they were doing. I mean, because the way our security institution was controlled, even on the Jame could control every other soldier, for instance. I mean, these are the realities that if you want to address the security challenges of the country vis-a-vis civil-military relations, we need to start addressing these points. Because at the end of the day, the crux of the problem lies in terms of what kind of control is being given to the security institution. Is it that they've been used for political purposes, or they've been used to address the issues of the public, and what role of in their own capacity, what role also are they playing? Do they want themselves to be used, or do they want themselves to act as an agent of the state and not on any political leader? So these are issues that need to be identified.
Thank you. Tamba.
Yes.
The judiciary from the 94 to 2017 January, the security.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is why I was encouraging Sait, with a little bit of funding. If I had the means, I would have encouraged people like him who wants to come up with records and make them public. This is what we don't have in the Gambia. There are allegations that the judiciary was biased on the Jammeh, that the government was influencing it, that security were doing stuff and getting away with it. As far as I'm concerned, the public events which I was involved with when I was young, and I was at Gambia College, were the 2000 student demonstrations. Although they ended up fatal, several students died. I believe from that point on, the Jammeh government learned how to deal with protests and how to deal with public disorder. And I don't think since that, if I can remember very well, although I was not connected with Gambian politics since, if I can remember very well, there hasn't been any shooting of protests or direct killing of protesters in the Gambia by the security forces. Things did happen behind the scenes, which we don't know. Now we're hearing them, or we heard them at TRRC. But in terms of the front of it, they were not going in with guns and spraying bullets. I mean, if we look at, I can't remember the constitution, the part of our constitution that says, if there was civil disorder, the government can take every step necessary to bring about that order. Unfortunately, even the United States or the United Kingdom, when you're quelling violent protests, sometimes people will die in the process. But law and order has to be restored. It's unfortunate, it shouldn't happen again. And we can put things in place. Like Sait was saying, our security are working under very difficult circumstances. Under Jammeh, they had vehicles to patrol. The fear factor was there. The intelligence was robust. They can go different places and enforce certain things. Right now, they're struggling to get vehicles even to do a speed pursuit. They can't chase people. Sometimes Samaritans give them their vehicles to chase people. Sometimes taxi drivers will help them chase a vehicle that people have reported to have seen kidnapped a girl or somebody into the vehicle. People just chase them on behalf of the police or pick a police officer or two and go. But let's go to the reform side of it. The courts under Jammeh, there were allegations. We don't know. I've seen Jammeh government win cases, and I've also read case law where Jammeh government lost cases. So therefore, if he had absolute control of the law courts and the judiciary was not impartial, how then was he losing cases in court? There are famous cases where the Jammeh government lost in court. Now, the governments do have influence over certain things. Appointment of the Chief Justice, certain appointments in the judiciary, appointment of the Inspector General of Police, and the actual operation manual of the police or the army, appointment of the Chief Defense of Staff, appointment of the Commander of the Navy, appointment of different heads of department in the government, civil or security. So you cannot say there's no government, even in the United Kingdom here. There are a couple of people in the Metropolitan Police in London who were supposed to rise to the position of chairman or commissioner in London. The Metropolitan Police head is called the commissioner. Their appointments were blocked, or some foul play happened along the way, or whether it was natural play, I don't know. But certain people who were supposed to become commissioners of the Metropolitan Police didn't become commissioners of Metropolitan Police because of the political interference. One of them, a famous guy of Iranian background, who was the most senior officer at the time, who could have been the ex-commissioner of police before the last two ex-commissioners of Metropolitan Police. So some of these appointments of heads of department have got political connotations to them. They have got political ramifications. But in terms of the way the police actually deal with the general public is different. The Inspector General of Police appointment can be political. the way the police will go and approach Mr. Barrow and say, hang on, Mr. Barrow, we're knocking on your door because we have reason to believe that you just slapped a member of the public. These are the reasons why we're taking you to the police for questioning. You understand? Communication along the way. You don't go and arrest Mr. Barrow and straight away, like it used to be in the old days, start jostling him and kicking him and bundling him, even though he didn't resist any arrest. Again, these things come with reform. You go to him, even if his house, if he's having dinner, he's got no knife in his hands, he has got no gun in his hands. Explain the urgency to him. Okay, you can quickly have your food. We want you at the station. Next of kin, we're taking Mr. Barrow to Carabao Police Station. It's not like the relatives coming, oh, he was taken to Carabao Police Station, they'll go there today. Next minute, he's been moved to Bundung Police Station. Next minute, he's been moved to Janjambura. The next of kin doesn't know. Again, these things are reforms. Who's supposed to enforce the law? Our law courts. I've mentioned this before. Reason why many Gambians don't take the government to court or the police or the army to court is the cost of lawyers, the cost of fees to submit these cases to court. Sait Matty has fought the government a couple of times, or certain people a couple of times, his organization. He can give me an estimate of how one legal case against the government costs right now, just a rough estimate. So imagine somebody who's earning $3,000 a month, who's been illegally dismissed from their job, probably has zero savings, wanting to take his employer to court. The employer could have been the army, like Omar Sarjo's case, who's suffering under the army, or now the army's washed their hands off them, immigration, because he has to fight for his citizenship. Imagine him going to court to fight the government. 2 years this case has been rumbling. Where do you think he's going to get the money from to take the government to court? He can't. This is why you sack Gambia like, I can't do anything about it. That's why these things, the security, in fact, the disciplinary procedure of the civil service should have in such a way that if we get dismissed automatically, you can resort to formal action, grievance. You go through it, it gets investigated by somebody different. But I can just turn up today. I'm the managing director of Gam Petroleum. Sait Matty, I don't like you because Kerok Dag Masaga. Boom, you're gone. Sait Matty is gone. He can't do anything about it. Sait Matty can just say, okay, I put a grievance complaint. The grievance complaint will not be investigated by the managing director of Gam Petroleum. An equivalent from another department or a senior above him can investigate that complaint. That one might be Sait Matty, might be a very impartial person and say to the general manager of Gam Petroleum, you're wrong. You shouldn't have dismissed him. Reinstate him and compensate him, plus pay him the salaries that he's been getting the last 2-3 months.
Okay.
Again, these are the things we're supposed to do. But with documentation, a national database, reform of civil and security, which is the public service, these things will go eventually. But today, we have a president who can't even read properly. He can't speak properly. If you take paper to him and say to him, the PMO is not acting properly in the appointment of so-and-so person, what do you think the President Barrow is going to say? He's going to say, oh, really? What, do I need to sign now? He'll sign it without knowing what is in the detail. This is why we're not looking for a Harvard academic or Oxford academic or Cambridge academic to become president of the Gambia. We just want somebody who can make sense of things. Either you're very highly experienced, or you're very highly educated, or you're both, and then reform can take place. If you want to throw anything at Barrow, it will not work, because whatever you give him and he cannot decipher it, he'll sign it.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
So we need to look at whether the judiciary was biased in Jammeh's era. Again, record keeping, making things public. We're reading a lot of judgments now of the Supreme Court, of the High Court. Some of them have raised eyebrows, like I said, lifting the veil of immunity. You can lift them if you want, but the Chief Justice himself, SFL himself, Lamin himself, we can lift their immunity at the TRRC and say, well, this is not their official duty. Well, they were not supposed to do this. Let's prosecute them because we don't like them. We shouldn't do that. The law should be fairly consistent.
Okay.
And that's where reforms come into play.
Okay, let me talk to the community. Hey, Binto Bantaba community. We are talking on the issue of Truth, Reconciliation, and Reparation Commission, which is the TRRC. My special guest here, our special guest, all of us, that's up there, Lamin Tamba. We have Sait Matty right here. We have Mr. Sarjo Barrow right there. So please, we demand that respect again, as usual. We will open the line because I would like you guys to ask your own questions. So the number will be down on your under your screen right there, +1 678 390 0539. You can call. Respect as usual. Brother Sarjo Barrow.
Yeah.
What are the shortcomings of the TRRC and the good part of it too?
I think the good part is having TRRC set up, and then Gambians knowing what happened. You know, there's a lot of supposition, you know, hearsays, and then allegations that we hear. But because, you know, in my opinion, the past regime was very authoritative, and then people don't know what is actually happening. And then we are somehow afraid and then self-legislate to even inquire or ask about what happened, except for other people that openly did. There are people that were brave in the last regime. They were going at, you know, finding out what happened. I'm not one of them. But we don't know what happened. And then people are afraid to ask. TRRC set that up. And then also another good thing about TRRC, it kind of set up self-awareness for Gambians. Gambians understand that our peace and tranquility is a collective responsibility. If we surrender or somehow abdicate this responsibility to the executive, one by one, all of us will suffer. And then I think that has changed the trajectory in 2017. People have taken ownership of their own freedom. They appreciate the president put in, you know, mechanism, but they let him understood that this right belongs to us. We gave you the power, we the people, as the Constitution sees it. So we are not going to let you punish us again. What we went through is enough. We are never going to surrender this power. And then I think that had happened even in the initial stage of 2017 when Dr. Sise was calling for questioning, Matty and others. Gambians refused to relent. And then their persistence actually set a new message to the government. We are never going to surrender our freedom again, because it's one person today to another, tomorrow someone else. And then because of that persistence, all of us, myself included, we are enjoying that, you know. And then that's something I'm always grateful for TRRC to let me know and then learn about what happened in my country. We cannot speak of more about the first generation we don't know. And then most of us, our youthful age, 22 years is a lifetime. And then if you take that out of your, you know, your active youthful age, nothing is left. So we want to know what happened and then what we missed, and then why so many Gambians are outside. So I commend the TRRC for that. The only other part, like I keep telling people, law is not what I do, it's what I live in. And then I believe in rule of law. And then I believe that that's the reason why, you know, I'm sitting here where I am today, going out, going to work, and then no one is just jumping on me and taking my money from me, because that fear that the law will take its course. And then TRRC, the act was set up, but hindsight is not 2020. But regardless, at least the basic issues, those has to be addressed. Like Justice Cardoso, one of my favorite quotes is, he said, the criminal must go free because the constable blunder. And then I'm afraid that could happen in Gambia. One thing I cannot forgive is seeing a very bad guy get away because the way we obtain evidence was improper or illegal, and then we cannot use it later. And then this guy is loose free on the street. That's one thing people have to understand. So to me, in as much as we want TRRC, the country, we should know our objective. Do we want people to pay for the gross human rights violation they did, Or do we want to have an account of what happened, hopefully find a way to heal, and then move on with a fresh pay? Now, if you are in my camp, I believe that people should pay for some of the gross human rights violations that happen. I think people ought to pay for it. But what I would rather prefer is, this is one of the shortcomings for TRRC, invite them to come. Invitation. They could lawyer up and say, I don't want to come and testify, and then subpoena them. They would file a motion to quash or do whatever at the court. The court would tell them, you have two options. If you want him to compel testimony, give him some protection. If you don't want that, let him keep quiet. So we as citizens could see whether we roll the dice. Okay, we would take on the evidence we have now, whether flimsy or not enough, and then charge you in court. Or we would let you not testify, and we would have other people testify. And then as part of their testimony, if we learn things that are ugly about you, since you don't have an opportunity to talk, you don't want to roll the dice, we would start the process, what we will do when the court of law comes. But what is not clear, this is the subcomment I have for TRRC. Even if you invite somebody to come there, let's say people who do not have lawyers, you invite Sarjo to come to TRRC, and then you ask me to sit. And then the few clips I have seen, you tell them, it's an offense to lie to the Truth and Commission, and then you must testify if we ask you questions. You forget to understand that our Constitution, which is the flaw, is telling you that if you call a suspect and then you want to interrogate them, anything, because the Gambian Constitution gives that protection from self-incrimination. You don't give them those advisors. I don't know what happened behind the scene. Maybe they signed a voluntary waiver. I don't know, but I'm assuming that it's not the case. You take all this testimony from these people willingly, or whether it's confrontational, and then we gather it. You prepare your recommendation, and then now send it to the government. You tell the government, Sarjo is bad news, and then what he did is so abhorrent, we don't think he deserves amnesty, so we should prosecute him. Now, unless you have another independent way of obtaining the same evidence, you cannot use the same evidence from TRRC that they obtained, those statements. You cannot use it in a court of law. You just can't.
Yeah.
What Gambia felt, like most people, when we said, yeah, Gambia left in 2017, the benefit Gambia has, we don't have that in 2017. Yaya came through a coup. He suspended the constitution. He has that benefit. And then he sanitized his action. And then we agree to it, because whether, the process could be flawed, or whether he, pull a fast one on Gambian, in 97, he made us agree and sanitize his conduct. And we have a constitution. When Gambia left in 2017, it's not that we have a coup in Gambia. We still have a functioning constitution. And then regardless of whether a new constitution comes, or no matter how much you change the laws, we have ex post facto laws. We have bill of attenders. You don't go retroactively about things that happen. That's just black letter law.
Yeah.
Those things would never happen. So we don't, unless we also wanted to do a coup, suspend the entire constitution, come up with a new constitution, and then start afresh, and then illegalize everything that happened, and then throw out 400 years of precedent in common law.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury. So I think for me, that's the biggest shortcoming TRRC has. And then I don't want to see very bad individual end up going free because somehow the way we obtain our evidence was improper. That's my biggest fear.
But Barrow, don't you think that's too late now? Because they already wrapped up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what will happen. The recommendation will come, but even if the proceedings, let's say, you started prosecuting people for what they did, you would find an independent way of discovering evidence. A classic example is, let's say police just bust into my door and then without any warrant, filed a bunch of weed here or whatnot, and then took it, tortured me to confess that, yeah, I'm a drug dealer, whatever, and then took me to court. They want to charge me. The Constitution protects me from that illegal search. Every evidence that they got, all the testimony that I gave, would be ruled inadmissible. Now the prosecutor is stuck unless they could find another independent evidence or way of prosecuting me. Even though they know I'm a bad guy, guilty as hell, their hands are tied.
Yeah.
that's just that's what's problematic with it, So to me, that's my only fear and then shortcoming regarding what, especially people that comes there, they don't have any lawyers, and then my suspicion is, and then this is some of the commentaries that are coming from TRRC with the interviews from some of the employees over there. I understand that before anyone comes to TRRC, the investigative team works under the background, and then talk to you, and then each and everyone writes a detailed statement that is submitted to TRRC, like the lead counsel, to review. That way, the testimony, they see which one is relevant to them, and then focus on that without going through all that, testimony. Now, unless those initial statements during that preparation work, somehow these people are advised and then they voluntarily relinquish their right, we might have some of these problems come. I don't know that right now because that is not privy to public opinion for now. So I think some of these things would phase out once, we start challenging or after the outcome of TRRC. And then that's good for our jurisprudence. It's good for our rule of law. We will learn from our mistake. Gambia is young, and then we are learning, and then I don't expect us to get it right for the first time, but it is necessary.
Tamba, before I go to Mr. Jau, you go ahead. Yeah. Shortcomings and good.
Yeah, the shortcomings are basically from the onset. Like I said, the act is legal, passed by the House of Parliament, no problems with that. The part at which it clashes with the Constitution will become null and void because that's how the law works. Where a statute clashes with the Constitution, to the extent of the inconsistency or the clash, that statute will be invalid. So they passed the act properly by a Parliament, no problems with that. Now, the shortcomings, I'll start with those, and then I'll come to the benefits of the TRRC, because no matter what dislike I have for the TRRC, it has some benefits, and I learned a lot. So the shortcomings are the composition of the TRRC. It's a definite fatal flaw legally. And again, it only takes somebody to appeal against the white paper, and it goes to judicial review, and they throw it out if we have an independent judiciary. Right now, the word independent is in inverted commas, because I don't think some of the rulings that are coming out are very, very scary. But let's suppose the judiciary is independent, and they want to apply the principles of law. The composition of the TRRC will cause the TRRC lots of problems. The conduct of investigation, the interviews, and what then happened in the middle of the interviews will cause problems again. I mean, in fact, it says that in the act that what you say at the commission may not be used as material to prosecute. In this country, there's a police caution that they read out to you before they get you talking. You do not have to mention anything, but it will harm your defense if you fail to mention one question. Anything you later rely on in court, anything you do say may be used in court at a later date. So basically, if they didn't follow proper procedure until the minute you sat on that chair and you felt pressured, and they didn't provide, and mind you, this is not the witnesses having to go and get their own lawyers and pay them. TRRC should have made lawyers available for anyone who's uncomfortable sitting in front of the TRRC by themselves. I noticed Tufa came with Reed Brody or something like that, was sitting there and helping her out to smooth her testimony. I don't know, I think that was a TRRC the first day of her testimony. Was that level of protection given to other people? No. And what's used at the TRRC cannot then be used in a law court. They need to come with fresh evidence. Like he said to you, if the police want to come to my private property and they break in, they need a warrant of entry to come into my property to break in. That's different from public spaces. If they broke in here and found me with a bundle of weed, like he said, they didn't have a warrant of entry to come in. They were not chasing me from outside and then I came into the property, in which case they have a right to bargain. This was a planned raid of my property. They needed a warrant of entry from a law court to go in. So therefore, what the TRRC has done there, some people were under pressure. You saw Yankuba Ture when he came. He said, I thought you guys invited me to a meeting. So why? I'm not going to testify. And that, unfortunately, whether people like it or not, is the reason why they charged Yankuba Ture as a sole defendant of anything that happened in relation to TRRC. They said they're going to charge him for contempt, and then they realized actually there's no contemptible charge that you can bring about in respect of the TRRC. So now, because they couldn't charge him for contempt, they charged him for murder. And that, unfortunately, was caused by his God-given right, constitutional right. And the TRRC mandate actually says if somebody doesn't want to testify, you cannot force them. If you subpoena them, it's different. But at that point, when Yankuba said, I want to invoke my constitutional right not to testify, he was absolutely right. If you then want to charge him for a separate offense, so be it, which they did as a reprisal for his refusal to testify. So the TRRC has caused so many problems. If it was in any country like the United Kingdom, the TRRC may not be able to use any material, any recommendation they make to proceed to court. Because as soon as these cases go to court, the appeals will come in, and then the cases will be thrown out. We've seen the appeal Karafi against the Jana Commission, which Karafi is not the president, so they can bring about action against him. What the Jana Commission couldn't have done is take action against Jana, because Jana has his own immunity, the junta had its own immunity. They're different. But they could have taken action against Bassi, they could have taken action against Karafi because they don't have the same protection. I'm sure Mr. Barrow will know the Fitzgerald case law in America. The same case law why Jimmy Carter could not be prosecuted. Same case law why Clinton couldn't be prosecuted for his misdemeanors at the Oval Office. Many presidents, and it's only in Pinochet's case that presumed immunity was abandoned. And we know why they abandoned it. There's politics behind it in the United Kingdom. But many heads of state have got presumed immunity for acts or omission in office. As long as you're not walking in the street and cutting people's throats. If you took action based on intelligence briefing or advice from departments, you cannot then turn around and prosecute the president for it. So for me, these are the shortcomings. The composition of the TRRC, the conduct of the TRRC, big no-nos. The benefits are, we now know what our Gambian brothers and sisters are capable of in terms of the depravity of actions that they can take. The heart that they can bring to people, just for trivial things sometimes. That some people will just jump up because somebody said, I've got executive order from the president's office. Without questioning it, you can go on to things.
Okay.
Again, the TRRC has pointed out the fact that if you have a civil and security service that's not operating properly within the parameters of law, these are the dangers. It can cost lives. Sait Matty said at the beginning, when a life is gone, it can't be recovered. You can recover property, you can recover relationships, but life cannot be recovered. Therefore, before you take anyone's life, you make sure you've exhausted every single possible thing that you could do as a government or as a service before you take somebody's life. If you go to arrest somebody and they have a gun and there's a firefight, of course, why not engage them? If we have to eliminate them to save the public, why not? The Constitution gives the government that right to take every necessary step to bring about law and order. Unfortunately, if somebody's armed, warning shots, they didn't put the arm down, you have to engage them if the public are in danger. So therefore, the TRRC has brought out some of these things, what was happening behind the closed doors, the imagery of the NIA, the imagery of the prisons, the imagination of how our security was operating, rogue elements, how the smuggling was taking place in our country. These things should inform the Barrow government, or if another government comes in January next year, it should inform us as to the stuff we need to look out for. Mistakes we must never, ever, ever repeat. And these are the benefits of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jao?
Yes.
Before I open the lines, I'm about, just a second. I'm about to open the line. You can call +1, the number is down there, +167 839 Prepare your questions. Don't call, I will not keep you on the phone too long. So ask them the question, they will answer. Mr. Jao, do you think the TRRC served its purpose?
Yes, but with limitation. And no, because we haven't seen the recommendations yet.
Okay.
So I am still waiting for the recommendation because I think still we're in the process, in the TRRC process. And then it is when the recommendations are out and also when perhaps those recommendations are implemented, then perhaps we'll be able to effectively say whether it has really served its purpose or otherwise. But today, if we were to look at the TRRC, we will say that it has exposed or show, or as the previous speakers have also mentioned, that it highlighted some of the issues that were happening in this country that many of us did not even know existed. And I think this is why I was talking about the fact that the diaspora, the people that were outside, they were getting more information than us that were here. I was in this country. I was politically engaged. I mean, I was doing some research. Got arrested at some point, but I mean, a lot of those issues we wouldn't know. But then the TRRC is able to, one, remind us that all these things happen in this country, and that it must not happen again. And I think based on the statements, whether we have agreed or disagree with some of the witnesses, at the end of the day, we have seen we have seen that element. And then so secondly, I also think that the TRRC has been able to engage Gambians into a conversation about what kind of country they want to have. Of course, sometimes this conversation is polarized along partisan lines, but largely, I think the conversations are necessary, especially if we are moving towards a better, more democratic, more inclusive Gambia. These discussions must come to the table, and it will also have to speak to some of the urgent realities that are also coming up. I will say in terms of the limitation, I'm still questioning the role of the lead counsel, because the council itself and how it has, I'm not sure to what extent it has helped us reach the truth. And I think one of my future academic articles might look at those issues to see the advantage and disadvantage of such approach to truth-telling process. But of course, like I said, we still wait for the results and see exactly what the outcome would be.
Okay. This is what we're going to do now. We will use local languages. So they will call. They are free to speak any language so we respond. All right? Okay. I have a caller on the line. Caller?
Yes.
Caller Todi Madu. You going to do English or whatever? Lamin?
Yes.
Lamin Injai,
Yes, Abanyadi.
Mbijang Todi Madu Ingwai.
Okay.
Akai Todi Madu.
Tom Lamin Jaileti. Tom Lamin Jaileti, Mboda Combo Brikama.
Can you guys hear him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Njai Ibirimintina.
So say you could matter back because you can see from Kulumelonko Nani Lena Banco Kale because Kulumelonko about Makwela Bakele, Puruka Kacha. Hello. Yes.
Mbijan. Go ahead. Mbijan.
Okay.
Mbijan. Mkemoel. Ite diam mkemoel.
Okay. So saying coming for wala indiko akumaya batale pro kanyin kata si fasoto na banko kan. Because
it's connecting from Gambia. Y'all be patient.
So near GB, Gambia. Kata karang bungoto ka karang ka newspaper karang anin ka kulke oda mamantol wasa. So coming kanyin platforms if are creating Binto network and other places ga kacha kule melon ko na sola kule. Okay, ngana TRRC la karola.
Okay. Nkemwer. Ngana TRRC.
So ni ajibe. Ha ne TRRC jibe. TRRC Kabria set up 2017 kana bila. Ni ajibe.
Okay. Njai taman then is call number.
Okay.
Taman ila connection on Mambete. Is call number. Yeah, his connection is pretty much not
I mean, you see the injustice we are talking about. We don't have proper internet in this country.
Yeah. I mean, the internet needs to improve because we can't go places without.
Okay. Hello, caller. Your background, please. I can hear myself. Background, please.
Okay.
Yes. Please, when you are calling, reduce your background. I can hear myself. And the Alcalo lady don't want to hear herself.
Yes, okay. I think it's my phone that is echoing.
Oh, okay.
It's Charles here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Name, please.
Reduce your background. I can hear myself.
Okay.
And the Alcalo lady don't want to hear herself.
Okay, you are still, I can hear myself.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes. What is your name, please? Todima.
Ndelom Charles Demba.
Oh, see?
Yeah, now?
Yo, and the Gubi
Fala.
Yo.
Yo, njibisagi timba njiban kijani blunding platform eti ninges papakati blum blum. Chao njiban soki timba. Farsako jogiti atuam Lamin Tamba. Then paenga toko njisoge lombo njiban kijani lombo me mag Mr. Barrow and Sarjo as well.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So ntela nyini karo aman jamfa because ni ko jibe a follow dula anata ko afutata daminto abe tata nata TRRC ya mu me hijackle and hani truth reconciliation and reparation wo be chew ya be hijackle bare ni ala wodoli jibe wo kuma kan wo ni nyata abetiyata nin satra ko wole woji ko ani wol dankenia wole be tolto bare mim ko beti ndol nata minje wala nyintu ko e kamo clean don ne wata jo bay di mallam walti mini yanan kat ko bi jeenun kunu bare bi ni momo lota tilo ko no bi aka foka ma hanyi kadiyamu Gambia munat ne ma hanyi kadiyamu jumalo mi yayati yaya moleti momi yanan kat ka malla fi jutuna amalla fi moya yap amalla fi moya doya because binga sita je wala nyinti ko jolale mo amankaran nyin wala mi la ko beti jutita yo na bata jeto inata na be denta ko ba bondila dalilo mi yatane ko ba bondila e ko aka mo fale aka fanyale fo ay ko le moli tilimbalia barente ko momo mi yalon kat ko tonya ite yaya nata le drong ayete tilimbale ya wonyama aye bali kadiamu katonya fo aye yemune ke mune yaya mune be jeto min satinna atamman tra ku kedde baro ka enjoy de barka ku furngol enjoy ka moje wonyama do yeta ya muta ya tilimbale ya muno woti wo follow bitala Mr. Lawyer ni ya min fango ko ate min ka kenum ate alma wo kanake yo bare bitilo kono bi ito lafta minna yo sotol momo min yate saf fo min be kerin dum wala siloti bang min yate yafo ite mo nya lonna bu nyate kerin horomo to keri min yate yake na yate yemo fa na yate yemo tuji fo wala bang
okay konna goni fa fi na bana mema njilo filo mba gubun kalon very quick. Ibu fan 1 minute, I'll be encourage Kalon Lombo to participate to Mahmoud Gambia few.
Thank you. Yo, Njipan Lombo, Paganam Pluntu, dem Calonia. Antum parfe ke coupe, alone una pluntu mi, I am alone. Alone aknaim aime, anange senior to him haiteo. Hilime he haname hu e mandinga ngasoke kango allotale kalloringo abe lori wala kan kanjuma anin ala da porta minna kanani dunya e kene mu wayme safali anke yile an si ngote hilima iti mbi felike ati alo fiti heswati hitan heswati iti antake koto wono fu suwa e vulu ubisena bambaka ufulie upusoka ukuba usinia tumpu chona pabuna pakan kapinga hesaluna una utaka wa ufu hesali etakit manyima mame bafamina ke babe alona kinanyo yepsone kineun bare ning alona fulio abisen anona kanaima aime alona kanaima amislim alona kanaima chola alona kanaima ajamat alama bibla kanaima christian nosia christian eknem wayme asogia kana henyit wa we lachate le fidi pachintelele wa we nape wikena le fi wikena tewolo mbona sini ata ko kilelu kusubu wono fu yeni apuson ufuli upukuba e kafatan kenke fi ay naput a jogot anyi alon to dunia fi plontu ananeta to nge hasi alon e njille fi pisen an kap mi na soka muslime talo na fatokyo na soka christian talo na fatokyo na tokyo talon afaso ki ajamata yakina mweme njeri janjam bandi matio waram jame frima fufa ata abajomi wara gomu wara jame banda ayo hoto mata jaw akay bigo bigi to ko na singe heavy so why me alon nakaka isu women nakaka isu women nakaka ifeyu pour katamba singo abisen fango usena famuna thank you very much njiban to kan wan timba yes time to lombo njibi to bioblo thank you very much my humble sister and I greet you all of you panel or the guests
thank you translate abaraka
all right
okay I know you guys are watching listening kind of a bit lost. This is Karoninka language, Mr. Jau. The caller was encouraging the anyway, I will get this call, then I will come back and translate what he just said. Hello, caller.
Excited.
Hello, Binto.
Yes, Todi Mado.
Buba.
Ibrimintin.
Thank you. Ngo. Programo dia tabe diaring kende ke. Because Nimoko, this is one of your best programs. It's like the person is underestimating this program. This is your best program.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's your best program because Nia GB, the panelists you've invited have shown the level of maturity and respect for the audience and viewers. And I think Niatra be possible afang dolmi alanko imantara GB kang. If other media platform, even QTV or GRTS can replace these programs. Because looking at the current issues, these are some of the things that you expect people to know. So there's no harm in taking this program, particularly this program, for people to know exactly what is going on and what is expected of people. So this is a very important program because Miyake are important. The panelists you have with you there today are willing to speak their mind. And they're very, just. They are not biased. So I think people should comment Sait Jao, Lamin, Tamba, and Sarjo Barrow for the level of maturity that they have expressed and exposed for the whole world to see. And people should definitely emulate what these three gentlemen have shown today. This is what is expected of a genuine person. I think this is very important. Yeah, and also, your subsequent programs, people should definitely learn from these three gentlemen. I commend them for that. Okay. This is your best program. I thank you. I don't have question for them, Binto.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Hello, caller. Lamin is back.
Yes, yes, Binto. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And when you look at the TRRC setup in this country, one has thought that it is a very good initiative in a sense that it's very good for our democratic dispensation. One cannot deny shortcomings. And when I listen to the panelists, they all make a very critical and very technical presentations in terms of their submissions. Now, when you look at one of the campaign promises of the coalition government before coming into power, they informed Gambian people that they are going to embark on a thorough reform, of which looking at the human rights violation that happened in this country during Jammeh's regime was part of it. And looking at the entire TJ process in this country, one can only agree with me that TRRC has been one of an instrumental component of which we rely on as a nation. We believe that the TRRC is going to help us in terms of what I call it, rebuilding our nation, right? Okay, looking at it since its inception, because looking at also the three components of TRRC, the truth, reconciliation, and reparation aspect. During that deliberation, St. Martin made mention of something very important. That is looking at the way this the commission look at the issues of how to be able to uncover some of the human rights violations that happen in this country. Because before, we tend to assume, we tend to rely on rumors that this is what happened in this country. But we've seen the alleged perpetrators who came before the TRRC and admit to it that they were the people who were behind the disappearance, they were the people who were behind the killings, they were the people who were behind the killings, and also the torture of innocent Gambians whose rights were violated, right? And for us to be able to make progress as a nation, we need to know some of these things that happen in our country. Then we can able to look at the ways to reconcile and pave the way for us to be able to achieve the development that we want as a nation. Now, nobody can deny the fact that in as much as TRRC exists, there are shortcomings. Because every intervention had shortcomings, which nobody can deny that. We've seen those things, and those things were critically alluded by the panelists. And like you said, we talk about the issue of reparation. And the commission starts issuing reparation. But the way and the reparation has been done, well, to be quite honest with you, it's not satisfactory from my own point of view. Because we've seen at a point where, a victim rejects a check of 19,000 that has been offered to him. And we also had other victims who are also complaining the fact that the way and the manner they were being treated, because they're battling with these problems for almost 2 decades. And that they don't expect to be having that such amount as a reparation to them, right? But when you look at TRRC, ultimately, it really serves its purpose. Nobody can denounce that, to be frankly with you, because this has enabled Gambians to be able to understand the realities on the ground, things that happen in this country. At some point, I will go in against with the thought of the panelists, because to me, at some point, what happened in terms of how we initiate the TRRC, to me, it's not important anymore, right? Those things could have been against at the initial part of when the TRRC has been designed. You get the point? But nobody can denounce the fact that TRRC has not done what they're supposed to do. They have definitely worked in conformity with the the act that has been backed by the parliament, right? And talking about the other issues that talking about the issue of the indemnity clause within our constitution, this is a common language. One need to be very technical here. Where your rights stop, that's where someone's rights begin. You get the point? In this country, we all know that the first ever assassination, the first ever killing, extrajudicial execution happened in this country was in November 11th, which was very unhuman, which was already very ungodly. And that those people who did that, why they didn't consult the Geneva Convention, and which is an international law which has protected prisoners of war. They failed to do that. They deliberately go and kill these people. So to me, TRRC has done its work. And in as much as limitations are there, like St. Matty said, and other people said, those things we expect to have them, but we are going to learn better because this is the first of its kind in the Gambia. And our model also is very complicated because we involve reparation. We did study tour on other countries of which have only truth and reconciliation. But ours, we bring in reparation.
Okay.
So I hope that the government or the social government can definitely talk about reparation seriously and continue to pay reparation to the victims so that they can get redress and also justice that they deserve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Njaya. We appreciate it. Mr. Yao, I would like you to talk about the reparation when I finish with these few calls, okay? The reparation that people are returning the checks and hello, caller.
Hello, Binto.
Todi madam. Name?
Aziz Bojang from Canada.
Okay, Bojang Ibirimintina.
Ngala programu mfota jamala jemala moino. But I would just like to speak in English for the benefit of the panelists.
Yes, please.
Yes, I miss a lot of the programs, but I wanted, like you already stated, I wanted to ask this question about reparation and what does it mean. We should all remember that this is an alternative justice program.
Okay, but
it's about restorative justice.
Okay.
And in restorative justice, reparation can mean many things.
Okay.
It does not necessarily mean compensation, although compensation is part of it. Reparation, yes, I'm just coming.
Okay.
Reparation is about repairing the harm done to the victims.
Okay.
Taking into account the victim's need.
Okay.
The victim's need could be justice as a way of reparation.
Okay.
Which means, to some extent, a degree of punishment. So when we talk about reparation and look at what is going on, especially the provision to prosecute is part of the reparation. That's what I wanted to add to.
Okay. Before you go, hold on. Before you go, hold on. He was reparation, please. Mr. Bojang is a security. He was in the security, and we want to hear his view about the security sector. Okay, we can get him. Mr. Yao.
Yes.
Go ahead with the reparation part. They want you to explain reparation first.
Yeah, so if we're talking about reparation, then as like I said from the beginning, that reparation speaks to the issue of the victim. So the idea of reparation is to ensure that the victim is restored to its former former self. Whether, for instance, that's why I was giving example that those that suffered from the April 10 and 11, those that were shot, to ensure that they are given the needed medical care, for instance, to ensure that they are, they can cooperate with that. So reparation is about the victim. It is what exactly the victims should get from the commission, in addition to the other aspects, that can come with. But then this one has to go directly to them. Of course, recently we have, we've seen the controversy around the TRRC reparation policy and how some of the victims reacted. And I think some even argue that they were not consulted. And I think that is problematic, because at the end of the day, if the direct benefit, well, I wouldn't call it benefit, because this is what we owe to the victims. And that's why I always say that the atrocities that were happening were state-led, and therefore to restore those citizens, their rights, their well-being, must be also state-driven. But of course, the TRRC is complaining that they, outside the 50 million, I think that they were given, they are very short in terms of the other monetary aspect. But one of the victims is saying that, the 19,000 that was given, or even 100,000 that is promised, even though he has been taken to Turkey and nothing, of course, due to certain condition, challenges, he was not being able to go on the operation. So then they are giving him 100,000 because, of course, they said he benefited from some sort of a support service. But for me, my argument is that reparation must be victim-centered. It must be based on the individual victim, what they are looking for. It is expensive. They did not commit. I mean, they were not the ones that created those problems, especially those that receive injury or, injuries that are very critical, and those that have been suffering. I think the role and responsibility of the state is to ensure that these people are well taken care of. Okay. And so the reparation part of the commission is speaking to that aspect.
Okay, let me take this last caller, then I will come back to Mr. Barrow. Hello, caller.
Yes, Binto, this is Ajabina Sidia Sadi.
You say Sidia what?
Sani.
Oh, Sani Brimintin.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Greetings to you and your panelists. I just have a few things to say, and then maybe I will ask the question. But I'm going to focus more on the side of security. So much concern about security because I believe in any country without security, whatever politicians said, they will never succeed. So security is very, very important in any developing country. Now, when you check the setup of the TRRC on the side of security during the investigation, to me, I was saying maybe they were trying to quote from what used to happen to other countries, because I believe Gambia, we have our own norms and values.
Okay.
And security is more exposed when you are in uniform. And this is where we're going to get the biggest problem of security reform, because you call a general, an IGP, or a police commissioner to sit on a panel and only to hear from a council saying that you are lying with that heavy rank. Tomorrow you go back to the office with your subordinates, you want to give them command, they will laugh at you. Because security, when you do that, they say, look, you've just been bullshit by a council, and you are here shouting with us. So I was suggesting that they could have at least make it like any security officer who appears there will have been in civil. People will know that it's a security officer, but the uniform is too heavy. When you are in uniform, it's very, very heavy. So
are you saying that they were humiliated?
Yeah, because we used to hear that the council saying, you are lying. Okay. While the person is in a big rank, it doesn't show respect when you go back to the office. Okay, it has passed, but I was just assuming they could have looked onto our norms and values, because in our country we tend to respect as far as uniform is concerned. Now, when it comes to security sector reform, this is the biggest problem in our country. And I used to say to people that this security sector reform will never succeed in the Gambia the way it is going. They are wasting money, and I will keep on singing that they are wasting money. Binto, security forces in the Gambia, or even in any country, the performance is based on the government of the day. If the government allow the securities to work as expected, they will do it. But what is more important in any security sector, you have to consider their welfare. You will take men to go to Bangladesh, heavy training, whatever, as long as they don't have their welfare in order, you are wasting the reform. But let's just see, the Gambia security sector reform, what are we seeing? Once they fire someone who is close to Yajame, people start clapping, now the sector reform is working. It's not like who was working in the government. It's just about changing the mindset of the people. But the sector reform we are talking here is, now, let us say the army or the police. Okay, let us say now the soldiers having any single training in the bush exercise. After the week, they should be given an allowance. They will put the stuff of what they train in their mind, because they will say, you know what, we've gained something, and everybody will try to be more engage in the training. So they will learn a lot and they will concentrate.
Okay.
But now, you said sector reform, they are putting a lot of money with this security team. They are in the workshop, eating big money. The soldiers who are supposed to perform the duties are suffering. Okay. You expect them to do what? Tell them, look, you tell a soldier today, okay, like this council, they are making the sector reform, they're eating big money. Tomorrow, soldiers go on patrol or police, the police paramilitary go on patrol, they come just to relax. You tell them, hey, go and arrest Lamin Tamba. They're going to beat him because they're thinking, oh, you are just from patrol, he just wastes our time. They're not going to listen to this sector reform. Okay. They're going to beat him very mercilessly.
Okay, thank you, Sane. Thank
you.
So
the sector reform, and the last question is, I have a friend, my younger brother was in the army, and have a friend who was very close to him. They used to come to my house. After the graduation of their training, the boy was posted to Farafenye. And so unfortunately, he collided with that attack of Farafenye. And the boy died. So a friend of mine called me. He said, you know what? Or my brother, he called me, said, my friend who died, the family, they are crying. They say they were not called by the TRRC because they believe, they feel the pain like any other person. Because their son was killed and they are suffering. They are expecting for someone to say, hey, I killed your son, then I'm sorry. Okay. Or they are expecting a reparation from the TRRC, but they were not called. And now they are asking whether now this one goes to the Lamin Tamba, Mr. Barrow, and said Matty, if they can help. The person is listening.
Yeah.
The lady said, after the TRRC made a recommendation and they submit to the government draw a line and then they have done what they're supposed to do. So they sue the government for TRRC for not giving them the chance for them also to voice out their problems and feelings.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, that's the question. Thank you.
Sane, before you hang up, one thing I will tell you, we appreciate your contribution on this platform. Okay? Yes. Every time you call, you stand for the security personnel. Thank you so much, okay?
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. Okay. Mr. Barrow.
Yes.
We have a caller here that said the other families were not called forward. The Farafenye, they are the Carton. They gave me a list, but I think I remember this too. What would the TRRC would you advise them to do for these families, if any?
The legal advice, Dino, I understand. This is so. But from a general point of view, when TRRC Cabrera set up, right, and then the witness testimony started, and then as a family, Ningalanko, I have been impacted about what happened during the period that the act, governed. I think the issue should have been very childlike. Ningmaji reached out to me, I would have been proactive and then reach out to them. And then, because I don't think TRRC as an institution will know each and every victim in the country. So Malay mechanisms like or protocol kaidan the molla ko, reach out to us and let us know what's happening. I would expect investigative team, you could reach out and let them know, hey, this, I'm aware of information that I think might be pertinent. Neo approach a interview with the investigators, and then you still feel like they are shutting you down, even opportunities so that they have a legitimate cause to concern because they want their side of this story to be heard. That's a different thing. But from generally speaking, without giving any legal, it TRRC sula come understanding sort of like for what the act may compel to talk to everyone. It asks them to investigate. And then during the course of the investigation, in the other committee, okay, I contacted them directly, and then TRRC Mansong, they never give me a voice. And then let's say what Sait was, alluding to reparation, that's different. It's just you are trying to make amends to victims. Let's say TRRC come with their recommendation regarding reparation to this kind of family Yemen mentioned. They could rescind it and feel like, look, you haven't had me. How can you assess, this is my damage, or this is what's going to make me whole. Yeah, understand? From that point of view, they might have a legitimate concern. And then the other thing I have that, like I said, to me, I think TRRC is a good thing. I support it, and I'm a strong proponent for it. Yeah, understand? Without the flaws, I feel like it's a learning opportunity, and they will continue to learn as a country because it's young. But one thing I don't understand, the act doesn't, explain or at least, make clear. Reparation comes in any form, and then you mandate TRRC to engage in reparation. The government is actually conceding because certain member these acts were acts by the state. It doesn't matter. It's not Yaya Jammeh as an individual. It's the state. Collective responsibility to tax you. Even though Yaya Jammeh today, that duty continues under the current administration. Reparation comes, and then you come to victim A, 100,000 now. And then, in essence, you are admitting liability. It's wrong. The state actually wronged this person. They don't sign any waiver. And then they are not satisfied with it. They are legal advice. And they will still sue you civilly in the state SULA for civil rights violations because you already concede what trial matter. Once pleadings correct, you'll just file a summary judgment. You understand? But they should another millions. So the act should have been clear. If TRRC is supposed to engage in reparation, make it clear. Like comedian workers' compensation, they are you cannot go outside workers' compensation unless if they are intentional and willful thoughts. You understand? So in action menkadajang, every victim animal approach any victim to will investigate. This is the option, just like 9/11 kadajang when the civil suit happened. You take this settlement. Or you can opt out. Nima taxi masakunda suno. Ning jury systems, but in Jojo la case evaluator, you can take that. You could, you have the option. You could accept reparation, and then you sign a waiver. We move forward. Or nitama happy water, opt out. You masakunda sue because either way you are wrong. But these things come here. I know it's new. My expect and then Tabrima Sakunda said 2017, the problem is the transition itself, isn't what it's supposed to be. Yeah, for me, at least Gambia laid the wrong change of the deal sort of.
Okay.
When is there, Gambia, is no longer there, yes. But institutions, in my opinion, I think when it comes to security reform, institution is the problem. Gambia, we have weak institutions. If TRRC should make anyone learn, especially when it comes to security sector, you should understand, security is an institution. The president malcontrol, and I still believe and then agree, president executive powers, he should appoint those IGs and in others. But just appointing them doesn't mean they are in your pocket. I expect them to be independent. And then in terms of policies, less. What are the president powers because not policy muninet. Ni matra policy be file. I have no problem with that. But when it comes to operational issues, I understand. They should follow the rule of law. But Gambia, the question I have, like every caller, like Ngajanelo, the security sector, you need that training, either 6 month or 3 month bootcamp. Are they taught about rule of law? Like American Ibijam, police and you teach them 4th Amendment, 5th Amendment, 6th Amendment. Because they ought to know, because if they screw up anytime, they are costing taxpayers money.
So Mr. Barrow, it's a coming for tenting, because Gambian or Dima, political wartaje, and Molbe ibe nyalo kanyin TRRC left a fende fintina quarto that will favor most of them. But aside, ite lua long, ibe lua ba with the kids come from for almost 2 hours sign. A ketalo ko ha ning ko dole bije mbe mira la binala nyama tinala o nyama de yemina fo ko.
Yeah, obijela come like I said, it's a learning curve. You understand? And then Nemo left like a litigious. The one takeaway that I have comfort with in terms of TRRC is the knowing. Yeah, understand? I'm glad we know what happened. And then that could be a reference point for any Masakunda or the watchdog like Senor Ladopo. It make it much easier, like civil society organizations. They are trying, and then in terms of making sure what happened before doesn't happen, because now they know. What maybe that can court the mayors and then taking all these issues in court, and then that's commendable. But the other biggest flaw, even though we have independent judiciary, but in terms of Gambian legal system, Gambian, we are not litigious. Mandala la watenna culture kono. Hani bida kan formal camera komi ijawera kijafara polen. People are not litigious in Gambia. But I understand for lawyers are important.
Bele keno ma courtroom ko alkalo le yo kumandi family bele kateno.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think from lawyer, they are so expensive. Gambian, like when it comes to Gambia, and then I don't mean this to disparage Gambian lawyers or anything, you know, they are trying under these circumstances. But every lawyer not a human rights lawyer. Like when I was with Ayla, before na do ko filing, I don't want to say that. But nining border crisis keda. You understand? Lawyer jam wala kama sakundata into tax and then they can later a kilo. But Gambia, Tamba kame for. Civil society left a wulla or ye modo wrong ya fire. Lawyer fee from at neta kino. But yeah, we have what they call equal access to justice. Ni immigration kaito delayed. Ndeka masakunda samba federal court jane. In my cases, they are delaying not ninge sambe ninge so they pay for the legal fees. Equal access to justice. Those are the incentive ni ala ko masakunda na deputy also nyine keno. But komi ngai mem for the rec. To me, this is my I don't use like ni kumata ko coming menketa like people say oh you must sakunda ni boy over honey I don't use it as a reference point. To me, I don't use that as a reference point. We cannot use that. We want better. We owe it to ourselves. So what can we do? They should make so you don't expect the government to do the right thing. The laws are there, but put incentive. Remember, it's going to cost them money. You understand? People are suing the government. They are paying all this legal fee, and when it comes to na legal system for now, na procedure is not robust. Gambia mon buko understand when na kidyo kataraji sanji tang. Like if you discourage like you let go. Nkatara Gambia I go there, yefendi ninga mira if I do the cost benefit analysis, the kanjila ko na patara ya mari sama court because the person could be judgment proof. Ko di fonte tarabu jani proceeding be ko even lawyers are the one winning. Because in the system of Amal reform, pick Nyameng 200 years ago, we are still running on the same thing. And we have to become a little bit sensitive. But there's a lot of changes. Gambia require a lot of changes. Well, that's just the bottom line. And I don't think we are devoid of talent and intellectual. The problem is focusing on leadership. TRRC is good, but in we want to follow the rules. I see a lot of issues with people that are known to be, serious human rights violators. They might, get away with some of these things because of technicality. Those technicality, and it would be very, very unfair to the victims. Yeah, I understand that. We cannot hold perpetrators to account because we blundered somewhere and then we are not thinking, because this is serious business. We all agree or something went wrong 22 years. So if we are going to press the reset button in 2017, you cannot leave anything to chances. That has to be a deliberation. But we are all happy, excited. We jump in. That it wasn't a project Jamal filter, even the new constitutions. All those things supposed to come, yes. But I think the problem was we were too excited, and then there was not enough, planning and talking to think about. Yes, and then consultation monkey very well. That's what.
Ngal tentu ngali jayal nata platform oto jang. Ntolla jang kara londi dulani nolem andali yang karandi minna bi fani ala ya tolijo. Alkana mirako aliye mindina is adunda jana fintita jana. No, we learning a lot. And Sait, let me go to Tamba. Tamba.
Yeah.
I want you to say this in local language, any preferable one. You got TRRC a fatam fansol sambanam banko kam. Among kamben or sambanam. And ala mission nyantala reconciliation or sambanam banko kam. Ite emine form mole. Mini of.
Ngam for mole je walam fengo feng masakunda mentamandi. Luale ka tamandi. Public sector do ko ni niaje constitutional safe ka lual safe because bele tenta masakundala. Ni luati je mo moment yata do le tamandela and wodum ate banko sambano la nyato. So monebe banko sambano la nyato until be kambenta menna e ka fuma constitution wala loi bungo the law box wala loi bukol wala ba folantol ye nyanta men kala comme an kafunyo ma adoe memfo Sarjo luwaning masakunda be nyamen. Okay, so TRRC ya londile pour katonya fo atofa ngomonati tonya aning na yamfu nyoma ka fo me ko reconciliation ani momo tati nyata je domande ngoni nga men soto pour ka fa ko massa nga nyina soto pour ka dila e hakatunya nyina mo ate ya londi wala kama I can find truth, reconciliation, and reparation commission. So reparation no come kening on me call kenong bojam from Canada. I mem for all be reparation ning eka fenne correct memman tama nyama ya tama ndia nyama. Wala naketa keta la foka pare ye pare pour ka yitandiko imam pare ay ke koten. Yo so nyinati na TRRC lota bare TRRC hanna keta mol membe kelola nim banku fola be kelola eke fulo le commande ye sende ene wole kacha ale kacha pola se ben kelo se ban yo so nin TRRC mol jani be dunna government baro government na mole jangi ko ha masakunda nyin ya jamme ya beke jolati masakunda nyin ya jamme ya beke foni molti na keta wole bi je fanan na keta ya jamme wole ke woto foni wala jolale problem ot ni ko wo mol ini wala nyanta sila ale diamo ale hakati nyoye monat na ibe mo be men appoint la je commissioner sol kele mambo na o mol la representative so kono pour mo se yella ye yakar ko ha tonya mfana na mo bi jela out of how many commissioners 10 8 commissioners is a killing kenu je melan ko anin ya jame man do ko ke nyola ani ya jame man sonka ani ya jame man femmantare no itema bara botana foni wala botana jola bundato wala botana tribe is not important but ni ye more accused ni ko jama kun sengor ning fode kabala be kelola bare lafta le kelo bang e kata jama kun sengor le commande fode kaba commande na ye sendi ye diamonde ite fode kaba commande la nan ye mama janke wale commande na ba jama kun be jana membe kelola ye modo commande na mal ko ani modol mantara kelola iko e ka wala sende mel mantara kelola e ka wala sende pour wala reconcile won jam problematique mol yakarta menna memu problematique ka wala commande na it's just like peace talks deals when you do peace talks you involve all the warring factions you understand that whether nyine ronta wala nyine correcta ni peace talks all commence ta e bu ko sambananje reconciliation o ka wala nyama kari itela damfo hani okay damfo roketale mina diamo la man lafikalo njumale damfo roketale lafitale diamo be keraten nintenen kendi ngoni me commandiroke about Farafenya incident Kartong incident and December 30th incident I told you all those incidents happened ya jamala tamo munanna e kanyindo tombong e ka fa ante diam tinyindo diamola wa menyindo diamola nte e fenkonyin ete TRRC sunola at the moment because kala Farafenya attack na keta ya jamala government mo mol compensate anyama or ma waiver sign you understand that or agreement on yin sign wala Farafenya attack wala December 30th attack ila family so say Barrow government sunola still because government is continuous government manke individual thinking so handing PPP manke in 1981 Jawdata Naketa, there's no limitation of statute. Naketa murder, you can charge somebody 50 years ago. They committed murder and you want to charge them. It's the PPP government or sue no, but you have to sue the Barrow government because they're the ones in charge. You have to go in 1981. Danso in farm Mahoney or Mahoney can dole fa. You can sue them, but you cannot sue TRRC because TRRC famo a manke come a fansung government le more anything. TRRC is a system, transitional justice, part of our justice system. So Amari is a government or sooner because they didn't have compensation. But ideally, and highlight them before. We highlighted them, some of the witnesses came to TRRC, they reminded TRRC that I'll beg jump come for a incident. I'll jump at a carton incident. I'll go at December 30th incident, no investigate. And in several other aborted coups, come Yankuba Dabo e Menfo, it all been set up Cameroon Casamas Pulkaya Jamala government attack. But ma hawa chamning for sol ndawle mo somebody else nata fa o Casamance wulo kono. What cases will be to investigate ya jube jumale ba koma. Bore ma diamo. Yo so reconciliation on in truth and TRRC yara kata cool kele in some instances. But don't menje je walam. TRRC man impartial. TRRC jumped a very important cases all because he jumped out munat na jumped ala ntola suspicion o momenti walam. Molle bije melbe nyin kol koma iman lafi wala kullo le wanyar. Wala na iman wo farafenye kato nga December 30th la kol kise. Aneng munati na iman fonyin kol during the big position auto, either the deputy chairman of TRRC or the executive secretary of at least one of the commissioners. Born and bred fonyin ka ay tarje molye yilla ko ha yara na mo bije la woto ni tapale bije tapale nyin te kenola. Yo, if you suspect people are the problem in reconciliation, you involve them in the dialogue. Anyanda kila wala nyama. So menke ye fenjamale expose ye fenjamale wanyari menke to banko to mo melong. But adasatale. And the TRRC tamandi nyame. Abe TRRC cases sol fanang affect la le naketa nyi cases sol lumbesila iba futala luwa nyati lingola. Ning mol ye men commandi je ko hani bara la chairman o amon qualified no ka TRRC chairman. Wala nyil meli investigation okay. Ima investigate nyama because wolbe kam faring ya jamna kande anala mo wala na nyin fo nyin ke woto ima ke nyama luwa bungo nyin nyanta cases all nyin tala ya fay banta so nyin problem o nyinti.
Thank you.
TRRC reconciliation no se can all still reparation no se can all still but in tata kafuta prosecution auto kata court a problem o bebe wajabila o dula ngatona.
Okay. Mr. Joe. Mr. Joe.
He's mute.
You are mute.
Yes.
Yes. The victims are watching you right now. What message would you have for them? But I want you to speak in Wolof. Wolof.
Yeah, I think the Lutahon, new set up the TRRC was one to address problems you have the victims you don't face. And starting Finko Rona Dore Moy pour guy ham dekabi nga xam ne gars dinañ am closure boobu la ñu ooyee di truth hearing part. And after truth hearing part bi ñu ngi doon wax ne tamit nañ leen restitute nañ leen delloo comme ça yéen ko doon waxee delloo leen back to their whole, and that is very difficult. Ñun ñëpp xam nañ loolu noonu moo tax maa joxe exemple ne kuñ fetel it will be very difficult to su fekkee ne sax dem nga medical it might be hard pour nga restore ko fully to naka la war a demee. Moo tax reparation dañu war a toog di laajte victims yi lan la gaay buga lan moo nekk seen soxla lan la gaay nii loo xam ne dina leen mën a jàppale nga xam ne dinañ mën a am dunda bu sella bu rafet. Ba den lu ma wax victime yi moo nekk ne ñun suñu wàlla fu ñu nekk mooy advocacy. Of course am nañ victim center, they are doing a lot of work around that issue, but man suma wax bi dañ ko war a direct to government because man primarily I believe ne government moo war a responsible and government moo war a take care of every citizen koo xam ne moo nekk fii nii and especially koo xam ne nag ñoom ñoo ko tooñ seen bopp. And these are issues yoo xam ne I mean we need to always put it to the center ñu mun a ensure ne ñoo xam ne tooñ nañ leen am nañ dampaay yoo xam ne dina leen mun a jàppale nga xam ne dina mun a jàppale ëllëg tamit ñeneen ñoo xam ne seen waajur yi nekkuñ fi ñoo xam ne xale leen de lack opportunities yoo xam ne ñeneen am nañ ko ñu seet naka lañ leen a mun a assister because at the end of the day tamit man dama gëm ne su fekkee ne xooli victime yi seeda na in terms of the reparation or restitution boo xam ne jox nañ leen ko I also feel ne idea of reconciliation boobu dina gën a yomba parce que lu gën a important si man si TRRC process bi mooy victime yi and then suñu adressé the issue of the victim I think ne society bi yëpp seen boppa dinañ mun a nekk together. And the other thing tamit nag xam naa ne ñoom Tamba yëpp dama leen dee tooñ all the time su ma gisee gars yi seen Facebook bi rek every day maa ngi faa ñoom with back and forth yéen we do it mostly to learn but also to hear perspective because ñun suñu responsibility is to ensure ne the narrative of this country reflects every aspect of the Gambia. Man gëmuma ne power is in one side, power is diffuse dafa nekk fu nekk ku nekk am na rôle am and at the end of the day su fekkee ne we are telling a story about a country, it needs to be a story that is told from that country's perspective. It shouldn't be laced within politics or anything. Even though I'm top of politicians all the time, guys all the time that they want to continue, because at some point then they want to distract from the real issues you want to focus in terms of addressing the very conditions of our people. And so our victim then continue to advocacy, then continue the debate, then continue to ensure that you demand what is just and what is right for them, and then to ensure at the end of the day government will make control and then address the issue.
I'm not hamne dañ wax ne victims are used they are used for political purpose. They are politicized. So what is your response to those people that are saying that the victims have been used as politicized?
I'm going to TRRC like theories just today they dafa bari. I mean there are a lot of narratives you have ne mong fa. Why tamit luma wax mo nek ne I mean politics du ñaka ci process bi parce que process bi politics la in the first place. Politics bokk na ci, let me say that. But at the end of the day luñu wara xol tamit moy set lan moy njëriñ bi ak lan lañ bëgga am ci process man yene fofu la dé xolé motax ñom Sarjo ak ñeneen liñu ak Lamin even luñu wax ci process bi I agree on that ne process dafa wara clear, dafa wara impartial. At the end of the day ne ku nekk daf ci wara mëna gis boppam in terms of the inclusiveness lu mu wara nekk. Waaye ñuy wax ne yooyu noonu I think that they need to pay more attention to the victims. You understand victims, you understand how about if ne ñoom seen bopp ñoo nekkoon ci situation yooyu, how would they want people to react? At some point I think ñun public bi tamit that's what we own. At least su fekkee ne agree wuñ in terms of the politics, waaye su fekkee ne yëg nañ ne kenn sofana I mean tëj nañ ko fekka 2 days la 3 days la loo xam ne dañ génnee right am I mean dañ ko war a suñ ko dimbalewutee sax nañ ko bàyyi axam nañ ko bàyyi coonoom ñu seet naka lañ at least moom mun koo handulal boppam. But I think sometimes dañ dee fàtte ne at the end of the day, and I think Sarjo waxoon na ko in the beginning, that Gambia is so small, it's so related. The same person koo xam ne moom nga moo kooku mun naa nekk sa mbokka maybe yow sax xamuloo ko ne you also so fii ñun ñëpp a sofa. But at the end of the day tamit dañu war a understand ne lii it has been a period and ñoo xam ne ñoo gën a sofa ñoo xam ne ñoom lañ victimize to an extent bu naxari leen ñu restitute leen and then suñu leen mën a jàppale tamit buñu leen tegal wax bu naxari man foog naa ne dëgga ak mooy yóbbu dëgga si kanam and at the end of the day ñun ñëpp loolu lañu war a bàyyi.
Jërëjëf.
waaye mun naa lefi at some point dinaa war a bugg a daw. parce que am na some.
Okay, you go ahead and wrap up. We are wrapping up.
Wow. So maa ngi gërëm suma co-panelists yi I mean Sarjo ak Lamin Tamba, and then Lamin Tamba moom will continue the debate on the Facebook walls because you every day moom foofu lañ dee nekka. And then Binto jërëjëf I think I mean based on the comments ak discussions suñ fi dégga I think this is a very educative platform boo xam ne we're able to clear it because man Gambia lii laa si dee bëgg foo xam ne nit yi toog na ñu waxtaan ñu teg issues yi ñu génnee fa loo xam ne bokku fa. I think at the end of the day suñ continuer di def loolu suñ dëkk bi dina dem kanam but tamit bëgg naa reiterate ne at the end of this day ñun as civil society activists dañ nekk di try pour def mooy ñu protect the public interest public space bi nga xam ne ku nekk dina mun a am the right pour mu mun a demand and at the end of the day pour mu seet naka la moo mun a supporter in the advancement of the society. And then the last thing ma close mooy ma wax President Barrow mu bàyyi xel ne he was elected as the president of this country pour mu end self-perpetuating rule pour mu transition this country into a democratic society and tey statement buñ dégga mu wax statement loo xam ne la ñaawlu nañ ko and I don't think that threatening the political space in this country should not be encouraged and should be condemned by everybody, especially coming from the State House foo xam ne foofu lañ war a directé jubale dëkk bi instead ñu ngay divide dëkk bi so ma tëjee foofu noonu di la gërëm
we love you
and Sarjo will continue to
thank you you are amazing. He's the only one that ever connected in Gambia and we don't have issue with him. So thank you, Papa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barrow, last words? Any advice, anything?
Comme Gambia rek certain dingolam mo be mo cleanity and then I think ndaka men for mole now every Gambian should be political and then ngame mean wala mo ya lanko masakunda e kana fako ndati je mantang hakilo to la membe ke kan na banko kan because some way somehow is affecting you so mo be nyanta ka aware ya long mine be ke kan ye dake politiko to ke dake politiko to meaning ka jibe fo man sakunda nyanta ka meke ba ke ka nyala na mantara ke ka nya ya diamu memba na la sembote to la dula killing those things are very very important. And then the other issues come is set men for thing ni nyaton ko fintita e kumata ko mbe mo la right violate la mbe nyala come President Barrow menke what I expect is coming na police la nyato kundal aning sojarol wala nyata fintila ya fay jamul wa bankol tin to tanya pela mo kay ni marketing akatan to fon la banko kan janne and then army general fintita me ala ke be ko US Army command kan kaytan de ko look ni make kinship o dictatorship ndol kal luwale folo jam luwambe budala wol noma jamo tajere yala ibajalan si hani nyonya. I think those things are important, but most importantly Gambia we can continue to debate, we can agree to disagree, but among for the dame wala nyi nyo nengoti nyo bane o ka kelo ka kama ika kemelia kamala wolte fendi later and then they continue to live. The average Gambian man the batare no man changes nije. So it is a minute no ela kato you listen to it in the morning program man na men sit na pano kana bulanoma. But mulsi katano you can have fierce debate about issues because the moment alka kachal ka nyoso hakilola kada madingola muri si fang kisi no ya ko he nyinga memfo ala kumo nying sahayatal ya understand and that's something me along ko I can learn something from there and then I can take something out of that. Yeah, understand. So and then that's really, really important. Like Mr. Tamba mentioned something about for new community TRRC. You know, until today, I was with the belief every region Commissioner Botna Walter. Like they were saying it's Representative Musul. I was sitting with the belief ko komi every region in more pick Nigeria that way it become representative more ye fanje process ni kono komi okay ima willing da man kama yeah understand. So those are things mele alon ko in conversation okay you could learn from it and then understand that okay maybe misstep tajane but how can we remedy that and in terms of Nindol or can we do other consultative issues. But Gambia is at a point where people need to engage in conversation, but mature conversation. You can agree to disagree, but at least banko di ya horomo kama melonji forget about na dunia luala but hadama di ya fa nyanto na Christian yani muslima ya kono kanyo respect kanyo bunya ko hadama di ya nyanto di mola those things at least we owe that to ourselves and in the banko.
Yeah, appreciate back but let Lamin wrap up nga fo nyoy bay. Tamba, you are mute. You are mute.
Okay. Thank you very much. Binto, thank you very much for the platform again. Sarjo, thank you very much for sharing the platform with me today and exchanging ideas. And the same goes to Sait Matty. I can promise you that Sait Matty and I don't see eye to eye on Facebook. He's just pretending to be nice today.
He will come back for you.
Yeah, he'll come back for me. But he's a great guy. He's a great guy. I like his neutrality. And I like the fact that if you push him hard, you can get information that you wouldn't ordinarily get. So TRRC, overall, I don't think it was a bad idea. In fact, I wrote about how it was a blessing in disguise. So we all have to listen to each other without getting angry. One thing I want Gambians to get used to is exchanging arguments, several sentences before somebody jumping and say, hey, you're a rebel from Casamance, get out of the country. Or you're this from that, or you're from Kabul, or you're from Fuladu, or you're from this. I want us to engage. And again, these things happen at we can indoctrinate our population from nursery school, our customer services, our way of communication, urgency, realizing that you're working for the government to serve the people. You're not being paid your salary so that people can come and bribe you again to be able to deliver the service for which you have been paid. We should treat our brothers and sisters as kings and queens. Again, I want to emphasize this. Before you take a life, think, this is my brother, this is my sister. Is it really worth it? Can I preserve the life for another 24 hours, 72 hours, and see whether there will be new information, new change? Let's take our time. There's no rush to end a life. In this country, in the United Kingdom, even if you're sick to the point of you're being fed, you're being washed, you don't even know who's feeding you, you don't recognize your relatives anymore, you have absolutely no right to take that life. Euthanasia is wrong in this country. You have to fly out to Switzerland to do it. Let's have that attitude. Customer service. Oh, there's a queue out here. Why are these people queuing? I want to get rid of the queue quick. Hello, sir, or hello, ma'am. What can I do for you? We can't continue to have a civil or security service with open-ended stuff. We need to say, if you applied for a birth certificate and you paid for a fee, within 2 weeks that birth certificate will be processed and posted to you or sent to you. You can't come around, oh, he looks like he's in a hurry. Let me charge him more money to get my birth certificate. No. With the reform, you apply for a passport, you don't even have to be there. You pay the fee, you send your application, it's fine. The only time they need to contact you if the application form is not filled properly. You understand? Within a week, you'll get your normal passport. If it's a biometric one, within 2 weeks, you'll have it. If it's a diplomatic one, within 4 weeks, you'll have it. Let's have targets and deadlines and performance indicators, and we need to talk to each other a lot more. So TRRC should encourage dialogue still. It hasn't ended. Out of the recommendations they make, the government will probably have just a few of them on white paper, and they might not even be implemented. The next government that comes can look at the positives of those recommendations and think, we can do a little bit better. We do this and this and that. So it's not a bad thing after all. I would have loved TRRC to do a lot better than what they did. But then again, that comes down to us, integrity, honesty, looking out for each other. Thank you very much to all the audience. We must thank your audience. They're very nice. They're growing civilized, a lot civilized, not a lot of insults. And this is where I want us to get to. Let's remind them, let's indoctrinate our children from nursery school. What's public service? What's individual interest? What's public service? What's individual interest? Again, I've said, if APRC comes to government and I'm involved, we'll have a national service. These are places you can discipline people, ground them before they go into public service. And it will be for the benefit of you, Sarjo, and every other Gambian, not me that's going to institute it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Tamba. Thank you, guys.
Oh my God. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. I'll come back and drag y'all back here again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love, 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 love. Wow. Amazing, 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 amazing. Look at y'all. Yes. Yes, so, yes, so, yes, so, yes, so. We did it again. We did it. Thank y'all for being patient and here. Share this information. It's about Gambia. It's about our issues. Everybody will say, well, let's talk about issues. Let's talk about issues. If you want to talk about the issues, you want to hear about the issues being discussed, this is the right platform for you. Binto Bantaba Network. Every Sunday, Gambia time, 5 p.m. You come, listen. We will have politics, but we have other issues. Most important issues like TRRC today. Were you guys not amazed to hear all this? The concept you have, Binto, what the concept I have, and what they told us today. They taught us, they explained to us today. You might rethink. Yes. So ala barakangal tentungali je yalma nyon soto. Jande nga falia. Ni lafta ka londo nyini. Ni lafta ka issue solve for. Ke moy. Ke for. If I contribute. This is Jannam Nyimpalaso, Nyimbinto Bantaba Network. Nyimpala grassroots platform in do. Kaka Janet. Alia Nana. Nim alia kachali londo nyini nga londo nyina al fanambul. Alla participation. Pare nga falia nyati. Hormone mbunya. Hormone mbunya. Wodoron. But alhamdulillah, bi fanang kachaken do soto. Ntede aka ntede funding kill tentunge jay minketa na brodati Sarjo Barrow. Thank you. Thank you. Abarak. Nsita fanang nganda broda do tentunga jay minketa Lamin tambati. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Ngata Sait Matty. Thank you. Ala baraka. Ali Allah hajo tuje. Al natal nintol sita jam for 3 good hours. Ali londo mindinna. Natatam buluba tulola. At a fintila marala, we will keep it. So ala baraka. Ngali 10-2. Wow. Ngali 10-2. Yes. Nko alilam alnela moy foda na foda Gambia laba. Baba jawara don kilo. ndo mun dala national anthem today bar ngal tentu ngal jayi sain mbe min nyine kamba soto kan oromo ni mbunya alba maintain kan alba karanka alga konya atul qualified tentati. If I should have the patience, nga sija nga lamo, nga jobos, nga try nga jobos. Yeah, sometimes buka jobos. But some mba try ka naka jobos. Fonde, dole ka for jobos. Uru nga jobos. Fonde, alla sister sometimes man jobos. Para ala baraka kola solbe. Si, alu modi budumba buchoy. Si, fay yongali falombo Ngubunkolona being kalon engage, being encourage. Uncle Charles, thank you very much. Alumodi Putumba, Fiani Hatikunoni. La Baraka. The other callers, Boja, assist. I tried to get you back, but I couldn't. But thank you for the question. Ngamobe Tentu. Njai, Lamin, thank you. Thank you. Ngamobe Tentu Ngali Jay. Advesafero lalbe lamoiro lalin share. Alin share. Thank you all very much. Yes. Sanyang. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Allah baraka, Allah baraka. Allah baraka. Thank you all. Alin share. Alafu moli yanka kachake janne. Nalko Gambia issue. Kake janne. So alin share. Alin like. Alin follow. Isaje koni nata late. Al senje. Nalbe face YouTube. Alin subscribe. Thank you. Alimanyon soto Gambia. Kafale dunia koto ni wulu. Mbe wulula atolla kono kote. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Kujabi, thanks. Allah baraka. Jali baraka. Credit goes back to Jali. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Allah baraka.